Oh, okay, great. Yeah, it was just a stream key issue. All right, let's check the health of the stream here. Excellent connection. And all right. Uh-oh, what's it doing that garbage again? Why? 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 It's not even displaying the right text. What are you doing to me here? Okay, I'm just gonna remove this text here and change it up to the right title. For some reason, I don't know what's going on with the window view feature. Right, okay. Let's see what it looks like now. Yeah, of course. Doesn't even fit on the whole screen because it's too big. This is what happens when you change computers.
You got a new computer?
Um, well, I'm using my second computer
Okay.
because my first computer is huge and wanted to do, um, wanted to use something like my laptop.
Mm-hmm.
So, no wonder, look at that font size. This is humongous. Okay, let's try 36. But yeah, my big computer's like easier because it's faster, but it's also noisy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's on all night if if I run these streams. The laptop is almost silent. Oh, that's way too small. I can barely see it. Okay. But yeah, I wanted to run it a bit more silently so that we didn't have a bunch of racket.
Yep. I'm good for that.
All right, I'm gonna bump this up to 100 here. I think that'll be a good number to work with. Let's go 130. I think that'll work better. All right, okay. Let's check the stream. I think it updated. It's not on center, but that's fine. I'm not gonna fret about that. Okay, now the window capture. I guess that's the problem now, is that it's not capturing the window with the chat screen on it. Let's see here. Oh, I'm gonna have to set this stupid stuff up. Okay. Um, there we go. I think it should work now. Let's see if it's gonna pop up now. Take some time to update. I don't want to make this stuff so complicated. This was so easy when you could do a Google Hangouts stream direct to a YouTube live stream.
Yeah, they
It
messed up
just
with that. I remember you saying when I like first joined you and Andrew that they just changed that.
it was so easy. It was just pressing one button. You didn't have to worry about all these different parameters. Don't know why they chose to do that. I think it's because they phased out Google Hangouts in general.
Yeah.
But if they're going to do that, then why didn't they add the feature to Google Meets? Just, I don't know, man. Just gave me a big headache. I know Andrew has a lot of success with StreamYard,
Yeah.
which I wish I could use. The only problem is running it from a phone is not as stable on my device.
And you're using a phone a lot.
Yeah, the thing I love about Google Meet is it's extremely stable. I rarely
On a
get
mobile
disconnected.
device.
Yeah, I rarely get disconnected from it.
Hmm.
Um, it seems to work with like really crappy bandwidth, and it's able to cope with not so great bandwidth at times. But yeah, it was that's one of the good things about it. Okay, let me try this again. Okay, transition. Just trying to get this little screen to pop up here. Oh, I got some screen. It's black though. I think it's kind of working. It's starting to work. Let me double check on that. Oh man, why? You got it, but it's black. Okay, there must be one little thing I can do then. Let me go back in that setting and switch it over to this setting. See if that works. It's okay. Click back on the window. Leave it here for like 10 seconds and then check it. So I'm not sure how much of a delay there is. That's the other thing too, is I always get a pretty bad delay with StreamYard. I don't know what it is. Alright, let's take a look. Now it's blank. Wow. This is not treating me very well. Okay, so I guess it is that other setting, and I don't know why it's showing a black screen. That's interesting. Wait, is this the right? Yeah, this is the right one. Okay. I knew switching computers was going to give me a huge headache. I'm going to have to work on this offline when I get the chance to make sure everything's flowing smoothly here. If that's the case, we might be just doing a voice.
That's fine. We can just do it as a podcast.
Yeah, there's going to be a black square that represents nobody, and I need to remove this Mixed Metal Arts logo here. Let's see. I'll take that out. Alright, well, I'll have to do more testing on this later. We'll work with what we have for now. And we're live, so
Okay.
I guess we could go ahead and start this off on what we're doing. Is we're going to cover the last chapters of Crown of Swords. We've covered up to chapter 31. No, up to chapter 30 so far. An Andrew message. Let me make sure he's not trying to get back in or whatever. Let's see. Oh yeah, there's just one final thing I need to do. I need to get the link for this stream so I can send it out. They don't make it easy to find the link for that stream. There we go. Found it. Make sure to mute this because I don't want any feedback. Copy and paste. And blast this on the internet. Okay. That should be good to go. Oops. That's not what I wanted to do. I forgot, since I haven't used this computer, I'm not logged into any of my social medias. Yeah. Stuff I did not anticipate. Okay, sign me in. Great. Alright, so as I was saying, we will be covering some Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. Finally wrapping up book 7. So that means we're basically going to be halfway through after we're done with this book.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the second half is pretty crazy when it starts rolling down to the end.
Hmm.
But, yeah, so let's go ahead and introduce ourselves here. Look Centrist, aka Dusty Cubes. And we got Tristram Johnson here. Go ahead and say
Yep.
hi.
Hi, I'm Tristram Johnson.
And he is the Watt mega fan. Uh, Probably way more than myself. Like it's like an encyclopedia of Watt.
I love What. I read it many, many times. I started reading it when it was first coming out. I actually when I joined, this was the first book. This was the latest book that was out when I first started reading What.
Mm.
So very cool experience and really enjoy being on these chats with Dusty and Andrew.
And we are expecting Andrew to show up sometime. I hope he messages me because, unlike Google Hangouts, I actually have to approve everybody who comes in. I wish it
I'm
was
sure
just
he will.
automatic. But yeah. So where we left off, it was Mogideon had bail-fired or attempted to bail-fire Nynaeve.
Yeah,
Um, she
which is a
wasn't
risk.
sure. Yeah, she wasn't sure she had succeeded or not.
Mm.
But the next chapter actually replays that sequence from another point of view.
Hmm.
So we're going to go into Nynaeve's point of view during the attack.
Yeah,
So
and this chapter has an interesting heading because it's a word from the old tongue, isn't it? Uh,
yeah,
the
Mashiara.
Mashiara. Yeah, heart of my heart.
Well, there's a couple amazing things that actually happened in this chapter. We'll
Mm.
get into those things, and I think say amazing for Nynaeve as a character. So
Yeah.
there's like two major hurdles that she overcomes here in this. Well, three, I guess,
Uh,
if you could say,
yeah.
avoiding being bail fired.
Yeah. Didn't die, but I would say this chapter is Nynaeve's fulcrum. This is where
Yes.
like she leaves in many ways. There's first half Nynaeve and second half Nynaeve, and this is the moment I believe that I would argue is her fulcrum moment where she moves from one to the other. She pivots on this event.
Hmm. So the event what we're talking about here is she's on her way to meet with the sea folk
Mm-hmm.
um, regarding the Bowl of the
Bowl of
Winds.
Winds, yeah.
And Nesta Denrias is one of the, I don't know, is she a windfinder or just a wave mistress? I think she's a
She's
wave mistress.
yeah, because remember the Windfinders don't actually have authority. They like the Aes Sedai are really surprised that they're completely obedient to their wave mistresses.
Okay, so she's on her way to meet with Nesta Denrias regarding the Bowl of the Winds, and during her travels, she feels a giant surge of Sidar,
Mm-hmm.
and then things just get topsy-turvy really quick.
Yeah, because if you think about it, her ship was bale fired, so like it didn't just like get a hole blown in it or something. Like some of it just literally ceased to exist.
Yeah, it ceased to exist. Her location and space-time was changed. So I'm not sure how big of an impact it would have, but she was in one place, one moment, and what was it, like 100 or 200 feet in a
Down.
down river right after the Bellfire hit.
Yeah,
So
and
you
in a
gotta imagine it's
yeah,
really disorienting.
and it feels that way in the book as well. You're like, what just happened? Like even though you
Yeah,
know, because he was. I mean, thank goodness Robert Jordan did Morgedian's chapter before, so we do know what happened. But it is really confusing when someone gets bail fired
yeah.
and just
So yeah, I
yeah,
read this part twice as well because it
yeah,
was really jarring. Like she's having like her typical naive thought process in her head. I know she's complaining a lot about things she's encountered during the day, and then bam, it's like holy crap, what's going on? She
But
feels this surge of Sidar,
yeah, Sidar.
and then she's all of a sudden like trying to scramble for her life in a trapped and sinking ship.
Yep. And
And she's also trying to get water. She's trying to channel, but it's not coming to her at the
nope,
moment because the fear
she's
is
scared.
overcoming her anger. Um, so, just as she's about to, I guess, succumb to her situation,
And die.
uh, yeah, what she describes as um, what does she say?
She
Because in Sidar, it's all about
surrender.
surrendering your will to it, and she actually does it, which gives her the ability to channel without being angry. So this is a huge hurdle that she's finally overcome,
Yeah.
that she can channel at will, and she doesn't have to manipulate her emotions to do so.
One of the things I think that's really interesting here is what you just said, like that Sidar is essentially something you have to surrender to and let it take control. And if you do, it will then do whatever you want it to do. Whereas
Hmm.
Sidon has to be wrestled and forced to your control, otherwise it will consume you. Um, and one of the things that this suggests is that one of the only times Nynaeve was able to relax her control was when she was angry. It's
Hmm.
and we've shown this with Nynaeve right from the beginning. She wants to control the kids, not because she's bad, but as the wisdom of Emmons Field, she wanted to look after them, and she's like, I've got to control the situation. And one of the reasons she had a problem with Moraine is Moraine inserted herself into her controlled world, and
Hmm.
etc. etc. And now we can see that, like, unless she was angry, she was always in control. Now she's, even without being angry, agreed to give up control. And that's really important about what's going to happen in her future relationships with some of the other people, especially, particularly Rand, Egwene, and of course Lan. Because in
Hmm.
all three of those situations, she cannot be in control all the time. And by learning this thing here is symbolic of the fact that she's learned this lesson and will learn to do this now with other people, making her a better person. In not different, she's still herself, but better, because it isn't just about channeling, it's about her entire character.
Hmm. So, during this ordeal, she uses the power to blast.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sounds like it's described as if she blasts apart the boat.
Well, because
So that,
the cabin is still there, so
mhm,
even though a lot of the boat got bale fired, her cabin is still there. So that's why she can breathe at the beginning, because she's
mhm,
trapped in her cabin, but it's at the bottom of the river. So she blows through the cabin, and then she can swim up.
mhm. And as she's swimming up, she's actually starting to lose consciousness
Mm-hmm.
because she's been underwater for quite a bit.
Yep.
And she was actually already starting to lose consciousness when she was starting to channel.
Yep.
So as she is fading out, an arm grabs her from the surface and pulls her up.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing she notices is the voice of the person who pulls her up,
Yep.
and she thinks she's dead because she doesn't really know that Alan is still alive and kicking right now.
Yep.
And
And of course, it's his voice, dear
yeah, it's
listener.
his voice. So of course she's elated that he's there, and she gets very, I guess, giddy.
Yeah.
Um, if I
Well,
could.
she's just come from a near death experience as
She
well.
does come from the near-death experience, but she's also very giddy to see Rand. Like I know there's some
Yeah.
descriptions where she says like, "Oh, I heard giggling, but that wasn't me." So she's trying to deny that she's getting
But
giddy overseeing Lan.
yeah, I think it's both. I think her being like stressed out and like not fully herself allows her to fully express just
Hmm.
how girlishly in love with this guy she is. And I think we sometimes see that in normal life. Like there's some people I know who are very controlled, and in order to like date, they had to go and have like a drink so they could actually
Hmm.
let that part of themselves out a little bit to actually be able to express themselves a little bit more emotionally. And I think for her,
Mm.
it's near death is like just made her a little bit looser so that she can, because normally she'd try and hide it, even though that is the real her.
Yeah, she's very, I guess, I don't know. I guess you could say reserved about her more intimate emotions. Like she's not
Absolutely.
reserved about anger.
Yeah, but her
Um,
anger is the only thing, like I said before. That's why she could embrace Saidar when she was angry, because it was one of the only times she was not fully in control of herself.
mm,
But now she's moved on.
yeah, and we get to see a little bit of her demonstration of the power. So she tries to make herself look good for Lan. So she she uses the power to rinse her clothes out
Yeah.
um, and things of that nature. Because of course she looks like a wreck.
And then he
And
catches her up on the situation.
yeah, so he lets her know, hey, we I believe you got hit by balefire because you were one part of the river, and next second later you're like 50 or 100 feet downstream or
Yep.
whatever distance. And she comes to the conclusion that it has to be Mogideon
Yeah.
as the one that did that. Um, but yeah, they talk about like
The bond.
yeah, they go straight. She goes straight into um, wanting to be intimate with him because I know they go onto another boat. They get rescued by.
I
Um,
think she wakes up on another boat.
yeah,
Like
they go onto
he's
another
pulled her onto a
boat,
boat. Yeah.
and this is after, I guess they got the water out of her lungs and they revived her.
Again, this is not very well explained in the book, but we most of us think that like it seems that she uses the power to, I don't know, cleanse her lungs. Like so she got some of the water out with Lan, I assume.
Mhm.
But there's definitely like a thing where she embraces Saidar without being angry, and like makes herself feel better. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah, I've forgotten exactly how it says it in the book, but there's a
Mhm.
general understanding that she uses Saidar to cleanse her lungs or clear out the waters in some magicy way.
Yeah, that's the part that kind of flew over my head. I was like, oh, okay,
It isn't very clear, to be fair. I think we've kind of
okay.
decided it must mean that.
Yeah, so they have a conversation. Lan
Yeah.
explains how he's there, and one of the big things that's in contention is
Yeah.
that he's still bonded at the moment with another Aes Sedai, and he
Yep.
gives her like what he was instructed to do, which was to be her warder until she found one,
Yep.
um, which we know Nynaeve isn't going to go look for another warder.
No.
So um, at that point, she's like revived and everything, and she wants to get intimate with
Yep.
Lan, and then Lan explains that Morel would be able to sense what would be happening during the bond, which I guess I think she blushes about that
Yeah,
or
she doesn't want to
something.
think. Yeah, because she's from Two Rivers, which is quite reserved for even for Randland, right? Like they're quite
Yeah, they're
modest in
pretty
their dress,
reserved
and people
in
get
the Two
married before
Rivers.
they have sex and stuff like that.
Yeah, and they have like a certain way to dress pre-marriage
Yeah.
and things of that nature. So, um, so what happens is this whole time we could tell that Lan's trying to explain what it exactly means and what Morel did.
Yeah.
But it seems like every time he tries to explain that Morel and him had some type of sexual relation,
Yeah, that was
night.
part of how she heals. Like that's part of what she does, I think, with all her waters as part of healing them from losing their Aes Sedai, because that's why he was sent to her, because that's what she does. She
Mhm.
heals broken waters, and definitely she uses sex as part of it.
And I admire Lan here for trying to be completely open and honest with Nynaeve, but Nynaeve doesn't want to hear it.
Nope.
Um, she does not want to hear any intimate details about what happened.
Doesn't she whack him?
Does
I
she?
think
Yeah, she
she
slapped
hits
him a
him
couple of times. Like, and it's a really funny description.
because
The
like,
reason she slaps him is one, he shows up out of nowhere.
and she
Um,
thought he was dead, and she's like, "How
yeah,
dare you not be?"
and I was like trying to imagine the scene because it was like so funny to me because the way Robert Jordan described it is like trying to slap a piece of stone. Like there's like zero reaction in his face when he was slapped. I'm just trying to think, damn, how does someone do that?
And it
How do
hurts
you
her
get,
more than him.
yeah, how do you get slapped in the face and have like no flinch, no reaction whatsoever? That has to be like the most badass person in existence.
Let's be clear, Lan may not channel, but he is the most badass person in the entire series, isn't he? He just
Well,
is.
yeah, yeah. He has his shit together.
He-
Except when we're talking about like his. I guess his weakness is the whole um, the suicidal tendency that he tends to have regarding the war
well,
with the shadow.
yeah, it's not suicidal. It's just like he's determined to be honorable beyond sense.
Yeah, so I guess that's
Yeah,
kind of one of his weaknesses. But
yeah.
yeah, he's a pretty badass guy.
He freaking
Because
is.
this scene reminded me of another scene from the first book. It's a
Hmm.
different character, and I don't know if you remember this scene, but there was a scene where Rand. Okay, Andrew's joining now. Let me make sure he gets in here because I gotta approve it.
Hmm.
There we go. Okay, there we go. Hey, Andrew. Oh, look, you're in a nice beach. Awesome.
Yep. Yep.
um, so yeah, so the whole face slapping of Lan kind of reminded me of another scene. It's not. It's kind of what I call humorous um, slapping, but this is a different situation where it's not a happy one. It's more of like, damn, that person's an asshole type of slap.
Right.
But in the very first book, when Rand and Matt are traveling together
Hmm.
after they get separated from Tom, they
Hmm.
roll
Yeah.
into this inn where there's like this skinny innkeeper, which we're like,
Hmm.
oh, skinny innkeeper. That doesn't sound very good. Innkeepers are supposed to be fat and
Yeah, that's
whatnot.
so Matt to say that.
So, so yeah, the skinny innkeeper. I think one of his waitresses or something criticizes the innkeeper in front of Matt and Rand, and the innkeeper is looking at either Matt or Rand, and without breaking eye contact with Matt or Rand, he backhands the waitress.
Right. Yeah,
And I
just
was
really
like,
Oh
casually.
yeah. I
that's like, how
remember.
does someone do that? How do you look at someone else and casually backhand somebody without breaking eye contact?
It's like a
Yeah.
cheesy 80 movies move. It's like,
It
It
is,
really.
but it's one of those things that you would consider badass if you saw it on screen. Because
Yeah.
I was
mm,
It.
thinking, I'm thinking people are glossing over this because if you
Yeah.
really read this guy just backhanded some woman peripherally without looking at her and looking
It.
straight dead into the eyes of Matt and
Matt and
Rand
Rand.
without any type of reaction. I was like, wow, that's a stone cold guy right there, but not in a
Yeah,
good way.
no, but you're absolutely right. Stone Cold. And again, one of the things it shows, again, is whatever we do repeatedly, we become good at. Lan is good at.
Whoa. So you're
Lan
saying that
is.
Land gets slapped in the face a
Yeah,
lot?
so
absolutely. The Lan.
practice makes perfect when it comes to backhanding someone in your periphery.
It does. If he's done that so many, the innkeeper's done it so many times, he doesn't even think about it anymore. And Lan has taken hits his whole life. He's covered in scars, and he's made himself stone, both
Yeah,
emotionally
yeah.
and in his ability to take pain. Um,
Because I know even in New Spring, he had similar reactions to pain.
yeah.
Like he never would scream or
No.
yell out. Like at
Even when he gets
most, it'd be
stabbed.
Because I know he gets attacked by Moraine with like the water and the
Yeah, she
ants.
dunks him,
Yeah, and the ants, he takes the ants like a champ
and
without.
she wants him to be screaming and squeamish, and he just refuses.
Yeah, so that's kind of like his base character from even
Yeah.
from before this story back in New Spring. He was like
he
that.
he is the mountain. There's a quote from the end of the first Disney Mulan movie where the villain has the emperor like dead to rights, and he's like, "I'm going to kill you, old man." He's like, "No matter how the wind howls, the mountain cannot bow to it."
Mm.
And I think that's what Lan is. He is the mountain. He is
Oh
man.
yeah.
You know,
So he's the
and
mountain that rides.
Mandarb is a great horse, but just the fact that like people can mess with him, but he always chooses his reaction, and his reaction is like that's just so powerful that he has just got that level of control, and it shows why they're such a good match because we often think of Nynaeve as defined by her anger, but she isn't. She's defined by her control and care for others, as is Lan.
And her position of authority and how she has to deal with that when she goes out into the wider world.
But that's
Oh,
also about control, isn't it?
Yeah.
that's a good parallel. I never thought about that similarity between Nynaeve and Land before, and maybe that's one of the reasons that they're attracted to each other.
Yeah. And also remember that's becomes part of their actual relationship. Like they actually like have a formal marriage agreement, don't they? That part of the marriage vows that they do in Malkia is that whoever has to obey in public, the other one obeys in private. And so like there's definitely like a whole like implication that because she's the senior one in public because she's Aes Sedai, that she has to do whatever he wants in the bedroom. And there's definitely an interplay like that with between the two of them, that they're fine with each of them having control in a different part of their lives. And that understanding is just it's cool.
Yeah, yeah. So I
For
guess
sure.
the end of this point of view, basically, Lan wants to take her to shore, because
She
of
wants to
course,
get he
yeah, he's
wants safety
concerned.
first, and she's like, "No, heck to the no! I'm going to go and see the mistress of the frickin' ships. I'm not stopping
Yeah,
my mission."
yeah. So she's on an important mission. She's alive. She doesn't want to
Yeah.
impede, even though she did want to get it on with him. To
Well, well, she wants to get married, which,
well, she
but
wants to get married, but she
to
also
get it
wanted
on
to
with
get it
him.
on.
The reason she wants to get married is to have the sex. Just to be
Yeah.
clear.
So, and then there's that speed bump with Morel,
Oh,
but
she.
getting into the next point of view, we're getting into Elaine here,
Yeah, this is just
and
kin stuff.
it's a little interesting. So she's on a mission, right? So the funny part is she's returning to the kin, and at this point, the kin don't know that they were not imposters.
Yeah,
So
yeah. They're sure they
she,
are.
yeah. So Elaine goes back to the kin with real Aes Sedai that are known to the kin. So
Mm.
Merlilla and Adelius and
And they're like, "Oh no, you're a real Aes Sedai. Crap."
well, when they first see her, they think that the Aes Sedai are pissed off
Yeah,
that um,
they found all these runaways, right?
yeah, and that's not the case. So when she first gets there, um, and it's funny too because Elaine, not only is she an Aes Sedai, she's the lead Aes Sedai in
Yeah,
this
because of her
group.
power and her assignment from the Amaranth seat.
Yeah, so they do see that these Aes Sedai are taking orders from Elaine, which totally rocks their worlds. Um, so this is basically Elaine's comeuppance, I guess, when she comes back. But she's not there to rattle the kin. She's actually looking to get some help.
Hmm.
And it becomes like a pretty emotional moment for the kin because Elaine explains to all of them that they are not barring entry anymore for anybody, and they want any woman that can channel to report to the tower, and that they do have a chance to become Aes Sedai. So, a lot of the kin, they were either rejected, didn't make the cut and whatnot, but now for recruiting, it's open season, and some of the kin do take it emotionally, and
Yeah.
that was pretty cool. And they also find out how old one of the kin members are.
Yeah, one of the cool things here is that everyone misunderstood the situation. The kin thought they were hiding from the tower. The tower actually knew they existed and was actually using them as a way to track runaways that they wanted to get a hold of because they knew where they would head, but also to make sure there's a safe place for runaways who weren't ever going to be able to channel. But the Aes Sedai are also surprised to find out, oh crap, loads of you. I mean, there's they said there's something like 1,000.
1,700.
All right, okay. Yeah, tons. And they're like, no, there's got to be 400 of you somewhere. Or maybe
there's more kin than there are Aes Sedai.
Aes Sedai. And and also many of them channel just great. Like some of them have significant levels of power as well, which the Aes Sedai never realized would happen. And then this is the first hint we have that if you do not swear on the oath rod, you live longer.
Isn't one of the most powerful female channelers a kinswoman?
In the end, they do discover that one of them is ridiculously powerful.
Yeah, stronger than Nynaeve.
Yeah, but the point is that it's because if you can't pass their test, right? And remember, the Aes Sedai have a lot like Jordan pulled heavily on nun monasteries. And so there's things like the beating, humiliating yourself, being treated like a little girl, even if you're an adult woman, stripping yourself naked and facing all your fears. So there's people who had serious power in Sadar who weren't prepared to do those things. And so therefore got put out of the tower because they didn't fit the mold. And some of those people now are kin. And so this chapter and the kin itself is actually an indictment of the Aes Sedai method of training people.
Yeah, it's very exclusive, and they do know that their numbers are lacking, especially if they have to face the last battle.
Yeah.
And their ways are very restrictive compared to, the collapse.
Yeah, but they just don't know that, do they? They don't have a clue what it was like.
Yeah, because you have the oath rod, which is basically a punishment on everybody.
Yeah, that was how they used to do justice.
Yeah.
Could you guys explain the oath rod a little bit more? Because I don't remember the details about it. Like, why does not swearing on it mean that you age more slowly, for example?
Well, the oath rod is a double-edged sword, right? So you do get the ageless look, but also halves your lifespan. Aes Sedai don't know this, though.
It's never, one of the things we need to make clear, Andrew, is it's never fully explained, because what we have to do is pin together hints from the past with what we can see in the present. We know that the oath rod allows you, if you're holding it, if you make an oath while someone channels spirit into it, it binds that oath upon you and makes it unbreakable. And so the idea would be, if you were a thief, we wouldn't put you in prison. We'd just make you swear never to steal again, and then you literally couldn't. But if you were bound against something like violence or thievery, there would be like a tightening of your skin. It would actually create a physical change in you. It seems, from the evidence we get in the series, that is one of the reasons Aes Sedai do not live as long as they should as channelers, because the people we see who don't do that, such as the wise ones and the kin, some of them have lived far longer. And so it suggests that it's the binding that does that. And there was a suggestion that maybe in the future you could swear the oaths on the oath rod, and then you could retire from being Aes Sedai and just be a channeler by unswearing them, and then be able to live out the rest of your life, but not as an Aes Sedai with all that entails. But because it was a punishment, the punishment wasn't to shorten your life, but they probably didn't worry too much about that in the Age of Legends, because you're a bad person if you're getting bound by a freaking oath rod, because Aes Sedai didn't used to be at all. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. But
Yeah.
it's still a lot of guesswork. There is no paragraph in the series where anyone actually says that outright. There isn't one.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, that's like a lot of things in the series. You kind of have
Yeah.
to piece them together.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had to piece stuff together, just like how stilling undoes the oath rod and its effects on someone who's stilled. Like we saw that Swan and Leanna got
Oh,
younger,
yeah.
so that was because the oath rod was undone,
Correct.
which we wouldn't know. You don't know outright. You just think, oh, they don't have their powers anymore. Maybe that's what's going on. But it was actually the oath rod being undone, which
Yeah.
gave them the change in appearance.
They were no longer bound. But again, there's foreshadowing there because obviously it makes apparent very early that they are no longer bound because they use lying to get out.
Yep. I think that's how. Like they
Good
don't
foreshadowing.
give it to us right away. He gives us these little clues to tell us, oh, okay, the oath rod's not a thing for these stilled women anymore.
Yeah. It's crazy as well because it's seen as an honor to swear on the oath rod now, but it was actually used as a punishment. It's like as if people found going to prison an honor. Like, what kind of culture would you be like, oh, yes, this guy's gone to prison. Wow, awesome. You'd be like, but it just shows, but
point.
yeah. And like the idea of like things that we think they were used for, like we think the Egyptians used certain things for certain things. We could be totally wrong. Like, oh, they use this as embalming tables. What if it was just where they had their pizza? But we're pretty sure, like we've pieced it together. But that the Aes Sedai thought they'd piece things together, and like they used the Terran of the archways for testing. It almost certainly wasn't used for that in the Age of Legends. What was it used for? Anyway, that's not a discussion for today.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of the points that Jordan's making is that you will often misinterpret the past.
Yeah.
And we do that in our own world, whether that be history, religion, or any of those sort of things.
That's a good point too, in terms of both ancient Egypt and the Age of Legends. Like in terms of ancient Egypt, we still don't know for sure how the pyramids were built. So then at the extreme end of the spectrum, people are invoking like, bro, aliens built them. And then but then it could just be that I've read books too about how it could just be the case that they had a really advanced knowledge of things like engineering and geometry and things like that have that even excel what we know today. And then in terms of the Age of Legends, we know that there's at least it's not necessarily made explicit, but a lot of the fans say that the Age of Legends is actually like our modern age today, and the world of the Wheel of Time is actually like a future it's like a dystopian future that is like de facto a fantasy world, because like those buildings that could be interpreted as skyscrapers, and people talk about things that could be interpreted as nuclear weapons, and like the rocket that goes to the moon, etc.
Jets and what have you.
Yeah.
And absolutely, I think one of the themes of the Wheel of Time is that time will go on forever unless the Dark One breaks it, and as it does so, things will constantly modernize, and then there'll always be a crash back, and then there'll be a rebuild, and then there'll be a crash back, and that's one of his themes, if you will, and like we start to see as they go through even this series. Technology, it's not just magic, but actually technology advances significantly during the series.
Yeah, anyway. Exactly.
The dragons and the crossbows.
Yep.
And the steam engines that kind of get played with here and there.
Yeah. And when we see Nynaeve's final vision in the future where, they have literally rifles. Yeah. So.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
So, next thing, so moving on.
Yep.
That's when they find out about Brienne's age. So she says that she's 412, and Marilla just faints after hearing that. She just couldn't believe it, because she is basically the oldest living channeler
The
and
oldest living
record.
person alive.
Oldest living person alive, and I guess I don't know how they kept age records before the breaking, but I'm pretty sure nobody lived that long after the breaking.
No.
So we get right before they start to discuss the location of the Bowl of the Winds, Matt shows up.
Oh yeah,
He's
yeah.
like, oh, I've been following them, and I think I found the location of the bowl. And Elaine tells a small little fib. It's like, oh, I already know where it is. They hadn't told her yet, but she doesn't want to be, I guess,
Beholden to Matt.
yeah.
Is the Bowl of the Winds a toilet when you're farting a lot?
No.
um,
and there's
you mean like a very turbulent toilet bowl after
oh,
it gets
guys.
filled with flatulent gas?
Anyway, point is,
You have to find the Bowl of the Winds. I think I'm about to shit myself.
oh no. Yeah. So she's like, thanks, but I already knew. I don't need you. But she's still more gracious than she was when he rescued her from the stone.
Oh yeah, that's for sure.
Yes. So she has learned a lesson.
Do a good job. Trying to do a good job at being at least friendly to Matt.
But yeah. So 32.
Oh man, because when Andrew showed up, I forgot that I had like a quiz prepared for Andrew. This is for Andrew, and if Andrew misses the question, I'm pretty sure you're gonna know it.
Well, let's see.
And the quiz is Aes Sedai last names.
Oh no, dude, this is tough.
No, it's not that tough. Like, okay, all right, Andrew, what is Moraine's last name?
Oh, is it Damodred?
Yeah, look at that.
There you go. See, I told you it wasn't that hard. It depends on who I pull out.
It depends which freaking Aes Sedai you pull out, correct? There's like hundreds of them, and some of them are only mentioned like 3 times.
Well, the ones I'm going to pull up, their last names have been mentioned before. So, what is Varen's last name?
That one I don't remember.
Mathwin?
There you go. That one. These should be easy. What is Swan's last name, Andrew?
Sanche.
All right.
Yeah, great. Look at that skill.
It's usually because her name is always followed by her last name, it seems.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another one. What is Elida's last name?
Oh. That one I forget too.
It's long, that's probably why.
Oh, okay.
Do you know her last name?
I was going to go for Romany.
No, it's Elida.
Avruni Duronini.
It's Elida. It's close.
Go on, you pronounce it.
It's Elida do Avrini Arroyhan.
Okay.
It's a long and well, I think everybody from wherever she's from has those long and complicated last names.
Yeah, because it means like Elida, born of someone from somewhere. So it'd be like if it was me from there, I'd say I'm Tristram of Johnson from Middlesbrough. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So like one is of your biological house, and one is your location, the town you come from. Because the other people from Murundi have that too.
Yeah, I know there's a couple other Murundi names. Like, oh yeah, Murundi.
Yeah, it's similar to that fantasy trope thing where you have people described as being this person, son of this person, like Gimli, son of Gloyd.
Well, my surname is Johnson. You know, literally, that's where my surname originates. Is son of John.
Oh, okay.
And Woodson, son of Wood. All these sons. But I think I have a couple more. And I don't even know the answer to this one, but I know it was said in the book. Do you know Cadswain's last name?
No.
Oh, Cadswain, hang on. No, unless is she the Meldrin? That's not the right pronunciation.
Oh, Melidrin.
It's something like that.
Okay. Yes,
I haven't
Castellan
pronounced it
Maligren.
right. It isn't Meldrin. It's something like that, though.
Yeah, it's Maligren. It's close enough.
Yeah, you
Because
knew
when
what
you
I
said
meant.
that, yeah, when you said that, that triggered my memories there.
Okay.
And one last one. Oh, what was it that I was just thinking of? Um, shoot. Oh yeah. And this is going to be a black sister. What is Galena's last name?
Oh, I don't remember that one either. So I got two correct.
Cassadan?
Yeah, you're close. Casban is
I
Galena's
can't
last
pronounce
name.
any of them because, yeah, like my
Well,
pronunciation
because you
sucks.
haven't heard the audiobooks. Like
Yeah,
all of
yeah.
these names are drilled into me not because I've read them, it's because I've heard them.
Yeah.
And I think my audio memory is much better than my reading memory.
Yeah.
That's just the way I learn. I learn and remember things much easier when
All right,
it's a
Dusty.
lecture
I've
rather
got
than
one
it's a
for
book.
you. I've got one
Sure.
for you. Do you know we did Suan? Can you do
Yes.
or Swan? Can you do? By the way, I always called her Suan like the entire time when I was reading the books. So I really struggle with the fact that she's actually Swan. Leanne, her keeper.
I don't know her last name. I was gonna include her in the
I
quiz,
always
but
remember
I
it because I
forgot.
used to think it sounded like really like and sexy. Sharif.
Sharif, that's right. I
Yeah.
forgot that she had like um a um Arabic sounding last name.
Yeah. And like that's how I always picture her. You know, like that, like
Yeah, like
seductive.
coppery
Yeah,
skin, you know.
absolutely.
You think when you think of a seductive like
Yes,
belly
exactly. The
dancer
belly
type,
dancer. You read my mind.
yeah,
That's where I was.
yeah.
Well, I was
Well,
worried. I thought you were going to go for some of like the really odd ones. You know, like when there's like a Saeed and Sayel and Serene and
well, those
Celine.
really super odd ones. Like I did pick one, but most of all of these characters are main characters. I didn't pick any weird
Yeah,
off-ball
no,
side
you
characters.
didn't. I thought you were going to be like Melili's or one of those on my rels. I'm like, I don't have a clue.
Yeah, because I was like, Galena, well, yeah, she has her own point of
Yeah,
view, and she plays kind of a
no,
major part of the
Galena is
story.
major. Galena's huge.
Yeah. And
Galena's huge.
I know there's some other of the original 12 Black Ajas, like a lot of their last names are said, but I just can't remember them
Yeah.
right now.
And like Alviarin and people like that. But anyway, we need to carry on. But that was a cool idea.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was like, yeah, let's go quiz Andrew and see if he's remembering these characters.
I remember two of them.
Well, you did, but remember, you weren't prepared for that at all, and yet you still
No.
knew them.
Yeah. Well, I think like Dusty was saying, I've heard Moraine and Swan's last names so many times that they're like ingrained into my head.
Yeah, because people don't say, "Oh, Swan," they go Swan Sanchi. You know,
And a
they,
lot of times they'll just refer to her as her last name as well.
Yeah.
Well, at some point we should do that with the 5 great captains. Anyway.
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah,
I've
actually asked Andrew that in a quiz previously. And
Oh,
I
did
don't
you?
remember. Yeah, I asked you, and I don't think you got any of them right.
Yeah, probably.
But we've done like one chapter and we're an hour and a half in, so like we should probably crack on.
All right, let's get to it. So, next chapter, Sealed to the Flame, is a Elida chapter.
Yeah.
So, Elida's having some dream, and then she gets violently awakened. What the dream is about her and her power fantasies, basically.
Yeah, she loves those.
So she's like stealing Aes Sedai and being like a really crappy and authoritarian.
Yeah.
You know what the freaking leaders are called? I forgot. The leader of the White Tower, the Armelin seat. There you go.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
anyway, while she's having her dreams, Arviarin just wakes her up, and this is news of demise Wells. So, because I know previously she was like super arrogant and dismissive about.
Well, she thought
what
she had
happened.
him. She thought she had him, right?
Well, she did, but there were reports though about
That it had gone wrong.
Yeah, that it didn't go right exactly, and that it would be an easy thing to fix.
Yeah, because she couldn't believe it. She thought the reports must be wrong because like there's maybe a couple of guys who can channel, right?
Mhm.
And things like that. She had no concept that it could happen the way it did.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, one of the surviving Aes Sedai reports back, and she basically describes that, yeah, the Ashaman were in the hundreds, and out of all the sisters that were brought, I think like 50% only survives. And when I say survived, we're talking about like were not captured
Or stilled.
or stilled. So out of the, I think it was 39 were sent, and I think it was 13 came back.
Less like a third return, something like that.
Yeah.
It's less than 15 for sure.
Oh,
It's like
12. It was 12
does
of
it name it?
39.
Okay. But like they're not even like the strong ones. Like a lot of the strongest, in particular Galena, like
Mhm.
and like some of the absolute strongest they said I do not return, and so it's a big issue.
Mhm. So
Yeah.
she gets dismissed after her report,
Yeah.
and she's basically told that you better hope that somebody else that is ranked above you returns, because you're going to be responsible for everything.
But the
Um,
key thing is what happens after she leaves, right?
oh yeah. So after she leaves, um, Elida is realizing that this whole debacle of Demise Wells
Yeah.
can end up getting her unseated.
Well, Alviarin
And
makes that point.
yeah, Aviarin is actually trying to manipulate the situation here.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
And
so
succeeding.
yeah, and succeeding. So Aviarin tells the Hall's not going to be happy, and they will remove you, and
Yep.
you will be stilled. So um, Elida gets in this kind of frenzy where she's basically being told like her time is up, and Alviarin imparts on Elida that I know what to do next, and you better do everything that I say.
Yeah. And so now, from
Um,
now on, Alviarin is the power behind the throne, and she will run the tower here on out.
yes. So Elida does concede to that, but also Elida, in the back of her mind, is also plotting
To resist.
to resist and to fight back against Alviarin.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically the Elida situation. Alviarin leaves the meeting, and she is just
Yeah.
thinking about how she's going to proceed forward and whether um, what is going to happen, because she's not given a whole lot of information, because um, her next step up in the Dark Friends consortium is she's taking orders from Masana.
Yeah, because she's the head. Alviarin is literally the head of the Black Aja.
She's the head of the Black Aja, and she reports to Masana
Direct.
directly. But the thing is she doesn't know exactly what Masana's plans are for the White Tower.
No, and Masana has no intention of telling her. One of the cool things here is that we realize that power under the shadow is no power at all. You are merely a puppet. So Masana is a puppet of the Dark One. Alviarin is a puppet of Masana. Elada is a puppet of Alviarin. And like that's the thing, the meanest housewife in Two Rivers is actually more free than the most powerful member of the Black Aja.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
they're always taking orders, and they don't know why to what ends.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a strong philosophical point throughout the entire series, right?
Correct. Absolutely,
Yeah.
Andrew.
It's like competition versus cooperation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and emotional, spiritual, and physical independence against dependence. Because that's what the Dark One says. I'll give you everything as long as you completely give yourself to me and do whatever I say. And we see that in abusive relationships, right? I'll give you presents, I'll give you security, I'll give you money, as long as you do whatever I say when I say it. And like, so again, Jordan isn't giving us he's not preaching us a sermon here, but it's clear his view on the importance of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like a leader shouldn't demand loyalty just for loyalty's sake.
And not just under threats.
Yeah.
There's the difference between, leading by fear and leading by love.
Correct.
Yeah.
Those who are willing to do that for you because of love, it's going to be a much more stable relationship, at least between you and whoever you're leading, as opposed to driving people into fear, which is, what you get when you have mutinies and insurrections and revolts.
Yeah.
They're not really, it's like they're on a little tipping point. It's hard to balance that.
Yeah, agreed.
Be effective with it. But next part, we get it's a view from a new Aes Sedai, and which is really interesting. I won't go too much into it, but Elida confers with another Aes Sedai named Cian, and she is basically like a bounty hunter-ish type of Aes Sedai. She's basically tasked with looking at and finding the Black Aja.
Yeah.
And Elida tasked her with that, as well as investigating. Well, she doesn't
actually ask her
with investigating Alviarin, but she
assumes that's what it means.
Yeah, she says, look as high up as possible, even to the level of Alviarin, if that's the case.
Yeah, and so the thing is, Elida's doing this as they'll suss out that Alviarin's manipulating and trying to control things when she shouldn't and stop her. But what they think is she must mean the Black Aja. So they then decide to do everything they can to find the Black Aja, which isn't actually what she wants.
Yeah, and Elida tells her you absolutely must tell nobody about this, and she basically breaks that oath a couple pages later.
But it's interesting because the interesting thing is she doesn't actually swear not to tell anybody, because if she had, she won't be able to. She uses Aes Sedai wordplay, and because Elida is being so careful, because she can't just say, by the way, my keeper is controlling me. So Elida dances around the words, Cian dances around the words, and neither of them say what they mean. And so then when she tells Pavara, she doesn't actually tell her outright. She gets Pavara to kind of come to the assumption that that's what they're going to do, and then agrees with her.
Oh, you mean problems are caused by people not communicating directly like they should, which happens all throughout every book?
Yeah, absolutely. And in the case of the Aes Sedai, he hangs a lampshade on it, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He's like, they deliberately dance around the truth in order to have this oath that they always tell the truth, while obviously lying. And so he's like saying, don't do that.
All right, so she asked Pavara to help her. The reason she asked is because Pavara's family was killed by Dark Friends, and Pavara has always been relentlessly just basically doing exactly what Cian is being tasked with, which is to root out Dark Friends. And Pavara does end up becoming an important Aes Sedai later in the books, when we see her relationship blossom with Andral. Andral is such an interesting character, and I know Andral's not like an RJ character, right? Didn't Sanderson create Andral?
Yeah, he is the one character that Sanderson inserted.
Yeah, so, and I like that he had the Andral stuff is like like any combat involving Andral is just like pure Sanderson type of combat.
It really is. It's clever use of the power.
Yeah, extremely clever. I was like, man, it's like, I'm trying to think, when did the game Portal come out? Because I think it came out before this like the final books.
Which
So I'm
game? Portal?
wondering. Yeah, so there's a game called Portal.
I've heard of the game. I'm not sure when it came out. I'm gonna look
It was
that up.
it was 2000s. You know, sometime it's
Well,
like
one thing I know is that
2004, 5,
Sanderson
6.
is an avid gamer,
He is.
Yes.
and I wouldn't put it past them that he got ideas from Portal when he was writing some of the Androl like combat
Stuff.
sequences.
It says that when I just Googled it here, it said 2007.
Yeah,
Right.
so yeah, he probably did get influenced by the game then. That's what I'm gonna say.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone's ever asked him that, but I'm pretty sure it's like, yeah, well, yeah, I got some ideas there.
Well, remember, the Gathering Storm is 2002.
Right.
I don't remember Androl doing like Portal combat, right?
Oh. Is it Midnight Towers of Midnight?
Yeah, and when did Towers of Midnight come out?
It's several years later.
Yeah.
I maybe yeah, that must be like after Portal, I would imagine, because he had to write that one from scratch, whereas a lot of the Gathering Storm was already written by RJ.
Yeah. So
I've just looked it up, 2010. So yeah,
so
it's
that's
after Portal.
definitely after Portal.
So in the game Portal, do they use portals as weapons?
You can. Well, it's a puzzle game, so you basically, if you're going to put it into Wheel of Time terms, you are
you can make
person
gateways.
That can make gateways, like man-sized gateways.
But one of the things as well is that like RJ had already used gateways as weapons. Death gates were already a thing. That had already happened in the series. But what Sanderson is very good at is, as you say, he's taking cool ideas that he's seen elsewhere and going, what could you do with this? And I absolutely agree. I think that's a really good shout that he probably took his inspiration from all over the place and just thought, I think one of the things he really likes to do is use a power in an unusual way. And he also likes people who aren't good at the power being awesome.
Yeah, he's not good at anything else but portals, which you would think was like an extreme handicap.
But he's flipping awesome at the portals.
Yeah, he's good at it, and like one of my favorite scenes is when he pours lava on everybody.
In one of his books that isn't Wheel of Time, he has a magic system where the hero of the book loves the magic system but can't actually use it. He isn't magic.
Oh, the Arithmetist.
And that is such a cool book. The Arithmetist. And it's such a cool...
I've read that one. Yeah, that's true, isn't it? Yeah.
I love the main character is like super invested in the systems and he knows everything,
but he can't actually use it. And I just think that's a really super clever thing. And Sanderson loves stuff like that. Like not just saying, well, this is the most powerful person of this magic that's ever been, because that does limit the interest. Anyway, I keep distracting us and we need to get all going.
Sure. Next chapter, a bath. So this is going to be Rand's.
Of course it is.
So this is back at Rand. He does muse that he's ashamed of what happened between him and Min, because his passions got the better of him, and that's not the Two Rivers way.
Yeah, because he just had full-on sex with her, and they're not like married or anything or promised, and like he suggests that it was very vigorous.
Yeah, he also kind of suggests that it was kind of against he in his head it's like because it wasn't done the proper way.
Yeah,
it's
and
almost analogous to rape in his mind.
Like because the thing is, I don't think he like asked her. I think he just started, but she didn't stop him. She didn't at any point say no, and she makes that point, right? She outright says, I was as involved in that as you. I wanted that as much as you, etc. So she makes sure to say that. But I think that's the point, is that like he started before she said, by the way, I want to have sex with you. And I agree. Like she didn't come and lay a bridal wreath at his feet or whatever. But it is very Jordan makes sure that Min has that conversation to make sure we understand it definitely wasn't rape. This is in Rand's head only.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, Min makes it known that it was consensual. And she's
absolutely.
all aboard with it.
And she's been after
Um,
him for ages, right?
yeah, well, yeah, and we get to see the inside of Min's mind, and it's obvious that
Yeah.
that's kind of she she had have no problems doing that with Rand.
No, that was on her. That was on her to-do list, literally.
And because we see that Rand doesn't totally get Min and her forwardness. He thinks it's a game, and oh, we're just friends. She's just playing a game. It's like,
Yeah.
no, that's not really what's going on, Rand.
She wants to bed you, dude. Girls have
So,
sex drives too.
so, um,
Yeah, that's a
yeah,
funny thing
Rand.
that men don't think exists in this whole series.
So Rand is having some troubles. He's kind of having some issues regarding the Choden call,
Hmm.
and I know he's having musings of using it and
Yeah,
ending
he's just
everything.
tempted. He's just tempted.
Yeah, because of how powerful that artifact is, which is good because he doesn't know how. It's good that he doesn't touch it because he doesn't know what would happen if he did, which would be
Yeah.
utter disaster. But
Well, he
um,
would just have unlimited power, but
he
because
would,
he's a bit crazy, that would be dangerous.
yeah. So Min, they start to talk about a viewing that she had, and apparently, interviewing, she said that Cadswain is going to be an important person to have
Yeah,
around.
like she'll
Um,
save his life.
yeah, so just like Swan needs Gareth. Like, there's
Yeah,
these pairings we hear that they need to be around each other in order to survive.
yeah.
So I know one was initially we had the Swan and Gareth. Does she made that one already, right?
Yeah, she did. She told when she's with the non-tower Aes Sedai, she tells Swan when she sees her with Gareth that if she isn't with him at one point, she will die. There's a
Uh,
point in her life that he will save her, and if he's not present, she will
well,
die.
yeah. And the weird thing with her viewings is usually when she sees that, that's a certainty.
Well, sometimes
Uh,
there are specifics, and like the point is that it is certain either way. If he's there, she lives. If he isn't there, she dies.
okay. So we have that one. We have the one where she said that Perrin and Rain had to stick together.
Yeah, and she also obviously has the viewing that like Rand will have 3 women, right? And she's already seen it, and she knows she's one of them.
Yeah. And he's already kind of went through the three.
Yep, he has now, but she
Well,
saw that
not
viewing.
completely, because he didn't get it on with Elaine yet.
No, but it's suggested that she saw that she would have to share him, like
Yeah.
the first
Elaine
time
gets
she met him.
sloppy thirds.
Well, yeah, but in a way, in a way, Elaine had first, but also Elaine had first
Well, I
because
guess, yeah, emotionally she had first.
yeah, and she was definitely canoodling and kissing with him in hidden corridors before he even met Avienda.
Mm.
So it's 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 an
It's
interesting situation.
complicated.
Polygamy, man.
Like if Rain had Facebook, his relationship status would be it's complicated.
Let's go.
Yeah,
Dang straight, and would remain that way even after he got married.
yeah.
Anyway,
So
we need to.
Oh, my first wife is such a drag in comparison to my second and third.
so we have a misinterpreted viewing
Oh,
that goes on here. So Min tells him
No way, a
that
misinterpretation in Wheel of Time? Wow.
it never happens.
yeah, so Min tells him that she sees two of him, and then one merges into the others, and but one of you dies, and he misinterprets that to be his mental battle with Luz Theron.
Yeah,
He believes that Rand at this point thinks he's going to be victorious, and Luz Theron's going to be the one to go away. But this
yeah,
viewing has really nothing to do with that at all.
yeah, and that's kind of spoilers for the last book of the series, isn't it?
Yeah, we won't talk about that.
We'll have time to discuss
We'll
that
talk
another
about
time.
that when we get there eventually.
Because that's a
So,
pretty confusing section anyway.
yeah. So, Min tells Rand to take a bath. And this is where Rand, well, we talked about it, but this is where Rand apologizes about the incident.
Yeah, the sex.
And, and Min just tells him, well, that's what friends do to comfort each other. And he's
Oh,
like,
really?
what?
I should have met some of these friends.
Really good friends.
Yeah.
He also admits to the love square at this point to Min, and Min
Yeah.
is
Love square,
fully
yeah.
already aware with it. She was the first aware of the love square. She
Yeah.
just didn't know all the participants um, in the outset, but she was the first one to know that this was going to happen.
Yeah.
Um,
I think she saw it the first day. She just didn't know who they would be.
Yeah, and then they finally discuss that he needs to finally deal with this sea folk. So I think
Yeah.
they've been trying to talk to him for a while,
Yeah,
since the last book at
and
least.
it's one of the things that really irritates me about Rand is he does this ignoring people thing. He's been doing it ever since he ignored the letters the first time he went to Cairhine, and people thought he was playing the
Mhm.
game of houses, and he was just burying his head in the sand, and they're like, "Oh, this guy's super crafty." He's like, "No, he just buries his head in the sand when he doesn't like stuff," and like
Mhm.
it's why Do My Wills happened. He just didn't want to confront anyone, so he kept jumping from Cairhine to Camlin and Camlin to Cairhine to avoid people he didn't want to talk to, and that's why no one knew where he was when he got captured. It's one of his most irritating traits.
Mm.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, he could be irritating for sure.
yeah, this trait I don't like, his evasiveness. But anyway, but he eventually
So,
does it and uses his Tavernness to good effect.
yeah, and speaking of Taverin, that's the name of the next chapter.
Yeah.
Um, so they're going to go, Rand is going to form an entourage to go to visit the sea folk.
Yep.
He brings Kabashaman, Shiva, Flynn, Narishma. Min goes with them. Dobrain is also there as well. And I know one of the little feats he performs is like the air bridge. And we also see that there's a difference between like a female channeling an air bridge versus a man. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's struggling doing it, and he can only do a very short version of this air bridge. Where it's explained, it sounds like Aes Sedai can make like much longer ones without that much trouble. So so Rand and his air ramp, they go over onto the Sea Folk ship, and they are greeted by Hareen. And straight up, he introduces himself as a Coromor in a somewhat arrogant fashion. But
Yeah.
then again, he's kind of studied up on the prophecies, so he knows what's going on.
And he also understands to an extent that it's like, do you remember what happened with him being the Karen? I can't.
Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't
Karakar.
pronounce that right. Karan. And so, like, he's used to this whole declaring things now. But also, I think the Tavern nature that he has also guides him. Like, if you say this, they will be bound in a way. And we never see anyone get as good a deal as he forces them into in his presence. And I like it's shown that his nature pulls them to do what he wants.
Yeah, so I know they discuss in this chapter like the ambient effects of Tavirness,
They
how
do.
people speak in a very different way than what they would normally speak because of
Yeah.
that pull and that tug.
Yeah.
So when he goes and meets with the sea folk, he comes in full force. So he knows that in the prophecy that the the sea folk are basically supposed to serve him under Coromor, and he tries to demonstrate that others are already serving him by having some Aes Sedai kneel before him, and I believe that he makes him kiss his hand or something like that.
Mm, yeah.
to show that he has them underfoot. So when he's talking to Hareen, she actually agrees that the sea folk will serve him. And it seems initially this was kind of just blurted out, and she hadn't thought it over much because immediately after she starts saying a couple things that contradict that. So,
Yeah.
and then he says that she'll eventually become mistress of the ships, but he gives them a mission, and their mission is to watch the waters, specifically for the Shan Chan, and to alert everybody if they see these ships. And he wants them to travel in waters that are kind of dangerous at the moment. And Hareen does explain that certain ships that go in one of the areas that you're wanting us to go to never come back. So, and she does admit saying that she has heard news of the Shan Chan as well. So, their whole mission is to be scouts at the moment, to be the first alarm on the return of the Shan Chan, so that they will be prepared the next time they come, as they're expecting them to come back. So the next thing on Rand's itinerary, well, one thing he wants to do is he wants to further negotiate with the sea folk, so he gives Marana that task. And I think she was the leader of one of the embassies, if I'm not mistaken. Was she the rebel embassy leader from the Aes Sedai? I think she was the rebel embassy leader of the Aes Sedai, so, which makes her a Grey, I believe, which Greys are diplomats. And he knows that, so he assigns her the job of finishing up the negotiations.
Yeah, but he's left her way out of her depth because as soon as he leaves,
oh yeah, shit hits the fan.
Yeah, because they're aware that they've given away loads. They try and pull it all back, and they're deal makers. That's like what they are.
Yeah. So the next thing on their Rand's list to deal with is that, as we know, there are rebels that are outside of Carrion, and they're mixed. I guess there's kind of the whole issue with what was her name, Colivir, the one who hung herself.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a secession war-ish type of deal starting around Carrion.
There's some of the old nobles are thinking we should this dragon guy is not a good plan.
Mm-hmm.
But the rebels are actually some of the best people.
Yeah, so, and that's funny too. But the rebels, we do get a chapter where he meets them, and we'll get to that. But he needs to settle this problem, and it's basically Carrion and with the aid of Tyrants, and these were like the Tyrants who initially rebelled, like back in the
ages and ages ago.
3, 4, and 5.
Yep.
So that comes to a head in a little while. Well, not to a head, but we do get a little bit more insight into the chapters coming up. But next chapter, chapter 35, Into the Woods, which is what we're going to discuss here. So, Min and I thought that was weird. Min and Rand go by themselves.
Yeah.
Which is, I was like, okay, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, but they're dating now, so.
Well, yeah, but they go to the woods anyway, and it's not to hang out.
No.
So they go to the woods, and when they're out there in the woods, the first person they meet is Caroline Damodred, who is a relative of Moraine's.
Mm-hmm.
And if she has a line to the throne.
Yep. Because Moraine did, didn't she?
yes, Moraine was considered in New Spring, so
Yep.
she definitely had a claim to it.
Yeah.
So Rand and Min are casually strolling through the woods, and they're out in the woods because I guess, well, he's kind of like scouting
Mm-hmm.
on his own. But anyway, they're out in the woods. Caroline Demadrid sees him and recognizes him immediately. She knows who he is.
Yeah.
Um, and they have some interesting conversations. Like when they talk, he recognizes that, oh yeah, Elaine does have a pretty good claim on the throne. She's not very antagonistic with him, which I
No.
found pretty interesting. Like they're very cordial with each other.
Yeah. And like he uses her to go and speak to the rebels, and when he does, his whole chat is very political and very astute.
Yeah, so first he does talk to Caroline, and she creates a cover story
Yeah.
when
Just so that he doesn't.
Darlin,
Yeah.
yeah, Darlin shows up. Darlin doesn't know who he is.
And he's a
And
Terran.
yeah, he's a Tyrant Lord who's also part of the rebels.
Yep.
Caroline crafts a cover story.
Yeah.
And the cover story basically is, oh, this is a minor novel of House Strachan, and that's his wife.
Yeah.
Min is his wife. So they start moving over to a large. Well, anyway, there's also this kind of weird love triangle thing too, because Darlin wants to marry Caroline, and then there's like some other
Well,
guy that we meet later.
she's currently single, and there's multiple people who are interested. But
Yeah.
that's no surprise. She's hot, she's rich, and she could potentially become a queen. So, but this is the first time we're given the idea that Darlin might be one of the ones who's interested, and the power that if those two aligned, because he's a good Terran rebel and she's a good Kerhinen rebel, but they are
But we
both
do get
anti-Rand.
And we also get a viewing that pairs them together.
That Min does, but this only happens now. Yeah.
Yeah, right now. So
Yeah.
while they're traveling over to the main camp, Min has a viewing about their pairing, and he also sees that Darlin becomes powerful and king-like.
Isn't this where she I think this is the chapter, because Caroline is related to Moraine. I think the most interesting thing that happens in this chapter really is, I mean, I know Padan Fain shows up again, and David Hanlon shows up, and Kadsun shows up, but what I think the most interesting thing about this chapter is that she reflects on that she had a viewing that was wrong.
But it wasn't wrong, was it?
Yeah, but she thinks it must be, because she thought she had a viewing that Moraine was critical to the last battle. And of course, Moraine is dead.
Yeah, well, they think she's dead.
We think she's dead.
Yeah, so that's pretty crazy.
She's not on this plane of existence.
Yeah, so she thinks that is the only viewing that failed.
Yeah.
And she's kind of having, what do you call it, like resignations, knowing that possibly from what she's viewed, that everything is going to fail because Moraine was critical to their success.
Absolutely.
So at this time, she's like, okay, I'm just going with the flow now. But in the back of her mind, she's like, this is all going to tumble down and burn.
Yeah, so even though I know I will fail, I'm still going to do the next right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So eventually they do get to the camp. It's described as like a giant circus tent. And they're kind of having a party in there, it kind of seems like. So he goes around, they talk to Toram, and the one thing about Toram is he's seen with someone who looks like Padan Fain, and he's going by some other alias at this time. I think it's Jarl Mordeth. And Mordeth is another clue of who he is.
Indeed.
So this pisses Rand off as soon as he catches wind that he's there, because I think that's his Fain is like Rand's trigger, right? Like that just puts him into a fury.
Yeah.
But at the moment,
he did stab him.
Yeah, that. But also, what he tried to do. I think it's more of what he tried to do or what he did do to the Two Rivers. And I don't
Yeah.
think Rand knows at this point that he's responsible for Perrin's family's death.
Not yet.
Not yet, but he knows that Fane is responsible for the attack on
On the
Two
Two
Rivers
Rivers.
in general.
Yeah.
So Toram challenges Rand to a duel. Everybody's like, "No, Rand, this guy's gonna kick your ass," but that ends up not being the case. Rand is capable swordsman.
Well, he's more than we know this as readers because we've seen him without the power take on 5 men.
Yeah, and they're like, "Oh, he's a blade master. Oh no!" So is Rand. Rand's also technically a blade master. He's defeated
He
one,
is.
which makes him a blade master. Plus, he trains like one. So they get in a fight. I guess an exhibition match, if you want to call it. The ulterior motive, I think, behind Toram is to not just make it an exhibition match, but to actually kill him.
I mean, this is my chance.
Yeah, so it's not clear if Toram knows he's the dragon. We do know that later in this chapter he comes to realize for sure and makes it vocal that Rand is the dragon.
Yeah.
But at this point they get in the fight, and during the fight, Rand gets distracted by something, and Toram lands a blow that was painful, and then Toram, after landing that blow, intends to finish him off with some type of fatal strike. During that, all hell breaks loose. Mashadar crashes the party, and people are getting snatched up by tentacles from a smoke monster.
Yeah.
But before that, I want to mention
which we believe that Fane brought, right? Because Fane was affected by Mashadar.
Yeah. Before that, I know
from the Lost Island.
Well, this is pre-Lost.
This is pre-Lost. That's true.
Yeah.
Maybe they stole that from Wheel of Time.
Well, the point is, no one's stole anything from anywhere. You can be inspired from all sorts of things, but the point is that there's nothing actually new under the sun.
Of course. Yeah.
Misty Dark Monster was not invented by anyone I know. I mean, that goes back to mythology.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I forgot to mention before this event happens is Min sees David and has a feeling, and she tries to impart
some wise advice.
Yeah, she tries to impart what she's seen in a little bit of a cryptic way to Caroline Domadred and those around her. Like, don't trust this guy. The guy is basically a murderous asshole.
Yep.
And will do anything to get what he wants.
Violent.
In a violent and repressive way.
Yeah.
So
I love that viewing. Like, she's him covered in bruises, doesn't she? It's one of the really visual ones. Like, she says that he's like covered in bruises, and it shows that he's violent.
So all hell breaks loose. They, at this point, they're focused on survival.
Yep.
People in Aes Sedai are getting snatched up by the smoke monster. I think one of the Aes Sedai is described as being flung into the air, and she like lands with her head like facing the wrong direction. It's a pretty gruesome.
Yep.
Gruesome descriptions. I know one of the guys described as like half of his face is like skeletal.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Fane is wreaking havoc here. Like, so they're trying to escape. And I forgot to mention that Cad Swain was also here at this event, and she had made herself. She kept Rand's cover.
Yeah.
But of course, she was doing it in a very wry and
she's not happy to see Rand.
Way. No, not at all.
And it doesn't help Rand's suspicion of her either, that she's meeting with the rebels.
No, because she's with the rebels. Yeah, so they're actually, at this point, they escape together. So we have Domadred, Darlin, Cadswain, Min, Rand, and I think initially Toram.
But when Torm realizes he's like Rand the dragon, he legs it.
So what's going on is Rand is having to suppress his use of the power, mainly one, because there's Aes Sedai there, two, because he's not supposed to be there or nor channeling around people, because that'll blow his cover. So there's an instance where I think Mashadar attacks an Aes Sedai and kills her.
Yeah.
And he straight up
channels
tosses some balefire out. And
yeah, no.
Did he get slapped right here?
I don't know, but I can't remember. But Kadsoon slapping Rand sounds about right.
Yeah, I think he gets slapped.
She does that more than once.
She tells him never to do Bellfire ever again.
Yeah.
But mainly she had kind of eyeballed him before to make sure he wasn't channeling.
But then he does Balefire, the biggest thing that he could possibly do.
Yeah, he instinctually did it and blew his cover. Toram saw this. And it's like, you are the dragon, and instead of like facing him in a duel, he runs off scared.
Yeah. Which is actually the smartest thing he does in any of the books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
this is a really cool part of the book.
Yeah, they're described as having to climb up the slope while fending off attacks. Eventually, Fane.
Yep, this is the keep it.
Jumps out of the mist, and he nicks Rand.
Well, slices him in the side with the dagger.
Yeah, it's not a big, super fatal type of stab.
Yeah.
Because from Min's point of view, she's like, it didn't really look that big a deal, but Rand is just screaming in agony after happens.
Because of the weapon.
Min is feeling really guilty as well because I think she threw a dagger and missed.
Yeah.
And she's like, she's kind of internalizing it as partially her fault that Rand was hit by the dagger.
And the key thing is, he was hit on the old wound. Just want to make that point.
Yeah, he was hit exactly where he was stabbed by, who is now
Moradin.
But he was
right.
back then. So he has these two wounds in the same area. He's screaming.
Yeah.
And they got to carry him out of there. I think he gets worked on in just a little bit. But they finally clear the mist, and they find a guy on the side of the road, and they ask him, wait, am I getting ahead? That might be the next chapter. Yeah,
I'm in Blades. Yeah, we're in Blades now.
That's the next chapter. So we're in the next chapter. I'm just like, oh yeah, that's
we need to. We need to do.
Yeah, we're in the next chapter, Blades. So that started with the practice bout. I forgot to tell you. But yeah, we're in a new chapter now.
The bouts talked about in both chapters. From one point of view and then from another.
Yeah, there's a switch in point of view.
Because Blades is told from Min's point of view.
Yeah, that's right. And that's when Min was completely odd about Rand's sword skills.
Yeah.
But so what happens, I think Samitsu is the one that's actually supposed to be a really good healer. She initially works on Rand.
Yeah, she's one of Kadsoon's people.
Yeah, she has a little coterie of Aes Sedai that work for her. So they go on this cart, and they're being carted along. Well, it's funny because they're kind of, at this point, they're forming a bond. And when I say bond, I'm talking about Carolyn, Damodred, Darlin.
Yeah.
All the people who are escaping together are actually forming some type of bond that comes in handy later on when they have to deal with each other later. Because they helped each other survive and escape this situation. So the guy, I think it's Andrew Toll, is that the name of the cart guy? So they put They ask them to take them to Carrion, and they go back to the tower. And at first they thought that, what was it that they thought? Oh no, they're going back to the Sun Palace, that's right.
But yeah, because they're in Carheim.
So,
But anyway,
yeah,
just moving through it.
when
It's
they
nothing
get there,
major.
when they get there, Catswain's trying to get him, like, put in bed and getting taken care of. Right now, it's really grim. Sumitsu, who's supposed to be an excellent healer, doesn't believe Rand is going to survive this.
Because it's so serious, and because she couldn't heal it, even though she's amazing.
Yeah, she's amazing, and she even had trouble describing the wound itself. The only thing she could describe it as is one darkness meshed with another darkness. And at this point, the Shiva shows up and brings someone named Flynn.
I love Flynn, Damer Flynn.
One of the older Ashraman.
Yeah.
And he's kind of like a Nynaeve type of wilder. And I say that because he doesn't really seem to know exactly what he's doing, but it works.
Too old to begin the training.
Yeah, so he works on Rand, and he's like, oh, can I talk? It helps me. It's kind of like Nynaeve and her herbs. He has to talk while he's doing his healing. And then as he's talking, it's like, oh, okay. So Sumitsu's like, what the hell did you do? That's amazing.
And she and later on when he this guy Flynn does most of the cool healing with the male side of the power, and there's later on people are just saying
with Dusty's. Sorry, I forgot to mute myself there.
Just she's like, tell me how you did that, but later on she's like, I will bear your children, whatever. Just we've got to be a team, and it's cool to see that they can overcome their prejudice if it's about the thing that they're passionate about.
Yeah, and it's almost immediately, because we know that Aes Sedai in general, have very, very apprehensive feelings about Asha'man.
Yeah.
And she sees this performed, and that totally melts away at that point. And she's more in awe than in disgust, you know.
But Kadsun's team are different from normal Aes Sedai, aren't they?
That's true.
They're not as panicky. They still hate them or whatever, or think that they're bad. But whereas most Aes Sedai seem to be thinking, "Oh man, channeling, no." Kadsun's like, a man who channels, better do something about that. And there's just a much bigger calm with her group.
So yeah, Flynn tries to also explain, and he uses actually similar terms that Sumitsu did. He's like, yeah, there's two darknesses within him, and he sequestered them, and they have to fight amongst themselves. He says that he doesn't know if Rand's going to survive, but he believes he has a better chance now. Mm-hmm. So that's how that chapter ends. Next chapter we're getting into is, if it loads here, it's a note from the palace. So this is a Matt chapter. Matt. So,
it's not a particularly important one, is it?
Not really. So Matt's just basically half dressed after getting it on with Tylan in the palace.
Yeah.
And he's basically on his way to the Rahad to get the Terangriel stash. And he's waking up his red arms that he wants ready to go. So
and we find out that they're married, don't we?
Yeah, so this is where we discover that Nynaeve had married Lan. And I guess Matt is not totally... He kind of sees it, I guess, as something that they would do, but he's like, thought it was weird that anyone would marry Nynaeve.
Yeah. He's just nonplussed.
Yeah, basically. So of course, Matt has a bunch of questions for Lan, and we find out Lan lets Matt know that two of his red arms were killed during the Bellfire attack,
Yeah,
and that
because they were on the
Mogedian's in
boat.
town. Yeah,
Yep.
and Mogedian is back in town, and so that's the main thing of this chapter. Was
And maybe we should just mention the note. The note, because
Oh yeah,
I
yeah,
mean
the
the note's
daughter of
not
the
particularly
moon's
important, but
note.
it mentions the daughter of the nine moons, doesn't it? That's the key
Yeah,
thing.
so yeah, Thailand had sent a note asking about the daughter of the nine moons.
And
I
he's
guess
just
this
freaking
is
out because he's been talking
yeah,
about it in his sleep.
yeah. So that's Thailand. I don't know if that's a jealousy thing, if she's just
Yeah,
asking
because
about
he's
it.
like in his sleep, he's talking about the daughter of the nine moons, and so she's like, "Hey, who's this? Who's this other girl? This daughter of the nine moons?" And he's like, "Oh no, crap." Anyway,
All right, next
38.
chapter. Wow, we're moving. We're almost done here.
Yeah,
Chap, yeah, chapter 38 is loading,
this is a
and it
bigger
is
one.
called
This is
Six
a more important
Stories.
one because we've got a lot going on.
Oh, yeah, this one is pretty important. Okay. So, Matt, point of view. Matt, two Supergirls, Elaine and Nynaeve, some of the
Hmm.
kin and some of the Red Arms, Tylen's son, Beslin. They're all going to head out to
To get
go
the
to the
stash.
Tehran Grill house in the Rahad.
The Terran Grill House. I love that.
That's what I call it, the Tehran
No,
Grill
no,
house.
hey man, that's the best name. It's a house full of Terran Grill.
Yeah, so they're going to go to this Tehran Grill house. And there's a little bit of conversation about Matt's relationship with Thailand.
Oh yeah, because they think that he's like, oh,
They they
like
think
being
that
like a
he's being
stalker.
Matt. They think
Yeah.
that Matt is being Matt, and he's trying to like womanize the most powerful woman in Amidar.
But it's fun in a way because actually, though Matt does do a lot of womanizing, it's usually very light womanizing. Like a lot
Mhm.
of what you actually see with Matt is he flirts and kisses and maybe cops a feel, but he actually doesn't sleep with very many people in the series. Um,
No, that's
uh,
true.
but I think the implication is they all think he does.
Oh yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
point.
he's very flirtatious. He gets kisses and things, but
But
yeah, he's not
but what Thailand's
getting.
doing to him is way past that. But of course
Yeah,
they can't see that because they're like, "No, you're the womanizer." And I just think that's Jordan does that on purpose, obviously, to
Yeah,
like
it
deliberately
does that
flip it.
with like all the main the main Taviran and the main
Yeah,
Supergirls. They're all the men are always like, man, that other guy's so good with women. I wish I were like him. And they're all like that about each other. And then all the women are like, man, they're so good with men. I wish I were like her. And they're all thinking that about each other.
yeah, and I think that's really realistic.
Yeah.
I remember thinking when I was in my like early 20s and trying to date and finding it quite difficult. I remember thinking like, how do you go about this? Like how do you even get one of these girls on her own to ask her kind of thing? Because they move in packs, and I'm like,
Yeah.
everyone else seems to know how dating's supposed to work and how they like get people to date you properly, and I was like lost. And then I found out that a lot of the others were also feeling it was super awkward. So I think this is actually very realistic for a lot of people.
Yeah.
yeah.
It
Like
took me a long time to learn too that a lot of it is just about confidence. Like I learned in retrospect that there were really obvious signals that I missed from some girls and
yeah.
Yeah,
other jobs that I had had, and they were so obvious, but I totally missed them because I just wasn't confident enough to think that that girl was actually interested in me.
yeah.
Yeah, I had the same problem that you did, Andrew. Like, I didn't know that when I was young, a lot of chicks liked me. I just
Yeah,
didn't get. I couldn't interpret like those signals. So in a lot of situations, like I had a, I don't. I was like, why do I have so many damn female friends? And then I was like, looking in retrospect, I was like, oh,
There's
that's
introvert
why.
Dusty right there. Dang it,
I
I've
was
got too many
like,
female friends. Frickin'.
well, I had a lot of like female friends in my early 20s. I was like,
Yeah.
why did I need to talk to all these women on the phone? Well, they were my friends. Like I considered them my friends. And then my mom was like, why are so many girls calling the house? They're just my friends from work or whatever.
Yeah,
And then,
Dusty.
like in retrospect, I was like, I think they wanted to be more than friends,
Yeah.
because I spent way too much time on the phone in my early 20s. I was like, all these, oh yeah, it's that girl. Oh yeah, let's go talk or whatever. And I didn't go on dates with them or anything. We just hung
But
out and were
but you
friends.
probably could have.
Yeah, definitely. Like I think, like even one that was just a friend, and was like, oh, let's go hang out in Tijuana or whatever in Mexico. It's like, all right, cool. And then we're like hanging out, and she got like really loaded, and then she started like making out with me. I was like, I don't think this is right, so I stopped it. And I was like, oh, that was kind of weird. And then I asked her other friend, um, say, hey, blah blah blah, so and so like got kind of drunk and then started making out with me, and I stopped it. Her friend got really mad. I was like, why did she get so mad? And then I, like, thinking years later, oh, she got mad because that's what she wanted to do with me.
Yeah, because you totally rejected her.
But and also, well, no,
to me,
but,
they were just friends. I wasn't
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
but the point is, Dusty, they would definitely have talked to each other about you. That's the thing. She's like,
yeah,
you
yeah,
shouldn't have done that because she knows that I was looking to move in on that.
yeah,
They
because
get angry with each other.
yeah,
But
exactly.
anyway,
but yeah, going back into things.
yeah,
Um,
they feel awkward, but they need to get it on. They misinterpret.
I wish I was more aware of what was going on back then. I would have been like, oh wow, I'm actually like controlling the situation here. I just didn't know. And I would have been like romantically interested in the girls. I just didn't know
Yep.
that they were romantically interested. I thought they were just trying to be my friends.
Yeah,
So, well, anyway, so Matt explains that the situation is flipped,
Or
and it
tries.
is he is at the mercy of Thailand,
Yeah.
and he doesn't have really any say in what that relationship is. It's like forced upon him. And they don't really believe him initially.
No.
Um, not until later, but not
Yeah.
right now. So they cross the river. They get to the Tiangriel house, and it's like
Yep.
a 6-story house, pretty tall.
Yeah.
And they go and enter. And while
And we
they're,
have the fight.
yeah, so while they're waiting in the bottom,
Yeah.
2 Dark Sisters show up,
Yep.
Phalion and Ispan.
Yeah.
And they have their own thugs with them as well. So
Mhm.
Phalion, Ispan, and I don't know how many thugs they brought with them. Maybe a dozen? I'm not sure. It's a bunch of dark friends that they
Yeah.
show
It's
up with.
irrelevant when you're fighting heroes.
Yeah, so the Dark Friends fight the Red Arms. The Black Sisters fight the Aes Sedai.
Yeah.
And we get a little battle scene. And then
Yeah.
Nynaeve feels some channeling up above and asks Matt, it's like, hey, go up there, because Elaine is up there.
Yeah, because
So-
at one point Nynaeve is shielded, but like Lan
She breaks
saves
out
her.
of it.
Well,
It's
no,
like-
Lan hits them.
Oh yeah, Lan tackles the Aes Sedai, even knowing that what would happen to him.
Yeah.
So
But
he
by
goes,
tackling them, he breaks the shield, and then she can channel.
yeah. So she has, as long as Nynaeve can channel, she's going to have control of the situation.
Yeah, because she's way stronger than them.
So Matt runs up the stairs and he sees some weird-looking dude, just like wreaking havoc, and there's like a bunch of dead people on the ground. He sees Elaine there, and it's like, oh shit. We kind of get the narrative sense that, oh no, what happened to Elaine? Is she still alive? That's kind of ambiguous at this point. He gets into a fight with the man, and he's described as having reflexes faster than a Nerdral.
Yeah.
And during the fight, he does land some hits, and he notices that on the blade of his Ashandarai, there's no blood.
Yeah.
And he gets some hits in some pretty vital areas, and he just shrugs them off like
There's nothing.
Happened. During the fight, Nalessian arrives, and he is brutally murdered. I think he gets his throat cut, right?
I don't remember that details.
Yeah, he gets
too much for me.
No, he doesn't get it cut.
But the golem kills him.
The golem physically just ripped out his throat with his hand.
Yeah.
It was pretty grisly. Matt is distraught because he was one of the main, like,
Yeah, there was two of them, wasn't it? Talson and Nelson were like his two guys. Talmanes and Nelson.
Talmanes and Nalessian, and one of them is now dead. And he's regretting asking. Well, in his mind, he does this several times. He regrets having to wake Nalessian up, and he's like, I should have just left them in bed.
Yeah.
And as they're fighting, Matt touches the man's cheek.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it. It looks like a man.
Yeah,
he
sorry.
Touches the cheek with the medallion, and it screams.
I mean, it's been hit with like full weapons and nothing. Just a touch.
So Matt is like, okay, something hurts this thing. So he uses, I don't know, it seems like what he describes is like he's swinging the medallion around like some nunchucks or something.
You're just spinning around and like slapping him in the face with it.
Yeah, so he's fending off the golem, might as well just say it.
Yeah.
With the medallion. And then this actually does a job of warding the golem off, and the golem does. He escapes, but he ends up escaping through a small hole or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
like it's a hole that could not allow a person of his size to get through. Like squeezes through space that shouldn't be possible. And we need to say a few things about this creature. So everything physical that they do to accept the medallion has no effect. It doesn't bleed. And one of the other things is, one of them, I don't know who, but someone tries to use a weave on it and it doesn't work. That's important as well.
Yeah, like after the fight, and they kind of have an after-action report, Elaine does say that none of the power didn't work against it.
Yeah.
Well, saying that, right after the fight, Elaine does revive. And she tells Matt right there, channeling didn't work.
Yeah, okay. I couldn't remember who it was, but I just knew that it's one of the times when we definitely have it identified that this creature is immune. And the only thing we've seen up to now that is immune to channeling is the medallion.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, and that gives us the idea that this is why the medallion can hurt it. They're of the same kind of thingamajig.
Mm-hmm.
We still don't know exactly what, though.
Yeah. So they tally the dead. Some of the
red
died.
arms.
Some of the red arm died.
Yeah. Some of the dark friends.
Yeah, a lot of the dark friends died.
But they have the two sisters, don't they? They captured them.
Yeah, so Ibsen and Ispan and Falion were captured. Also, they thought they may have been too late because they heard rifling in the storeroom, but it turns out that they missed the bowl and they found the bowl.
Yeah, because they get interrupted before they can really take most of the stuff. Like
bowl
that's why they were all still there.
Yeah, the fart bowl.
The bowl of the wind, the thing that is going to save the entire country.
Farts will save the entire country.
They will, because it makes it rain, apparently.
So even though they have a huge setback, they find what they're looking for.
Yeah.
That's a joke.
All right, so if we go to the next chapter is all about the bargaining, what they're going to do with this bowl. The chapter is called Promises to Keep. So the next task is now that they found the bowl, they now have to confer with the sea folk, because that was the bargain. If they found it, they were going to bring it to the sea folk, and the sea folk were the ones that were going to use it to fix the weather, since the sea folk have extensive knowledge in weather control. So actually, first they go back to the palace to recoup. And this is where Elaine and Nynaeve confirm that Matt wasn't lying to them. And they see Tylan being super flirty, and I think at one point pinches his bottom. They're like, oh, Matt was not, he was telling the truth there.
Yeah.
Okay, so another important thing. Matt tries to explain what this creature is, what it does, and its name. So, of course, this knowledge is not something that is common. And it is said in the book that he got a lot of this knowledge from Brigida, who told him about the golem. So he's telling them about the golem, its abilities, what it did, and the Aes Sedai that stayed at the palace like, oh, there's no such thing as a golem. What are you guys talking about? And they're basically doubting this whole story because they've never heard
of it.
Yeah, they've never heard of a shadow spawn called a golem. So they're like, what's this tall tale?
And we find out that it's because it was in a stasis box.
Yeah, they don't even know what a stasis box. I know Matt brings that up, and they're like, "What's a stasis box?"
Yeah, but even like the readers, we have very little understanding of that right now.
Yeah, at this moment.
At this moment.
Yeah, so we don't really need to get in the stasis box.
No. It just means it's been brought from the Age of Legends. The golems aren't just walking around the Blight. That's my point. That's the only point.
Yeah. So now that they had this big old argument about the golem, they start to set up questioning of the Dark Friends, and the wise women are all fearful for some reason. Semenko is like,
oh, it's the golem, right? Because he's saying he tells them, you all saw it, and they're like, oh, they're just freaked out by it.
Except Semenko.
All right.
That's the only one but she's kind of like the bold one. She's the bold, one. But the next task is they need to talk to the Windfinder.
Yeah.
To arrange the whole transfer of the ball of the winds. So eventually they do go, and they're having a breakdown. They do have a breakdown in negotiations. And I know Matt just gets extremely frustrated about this. And I don't know if it's Taviran pulling here, but he becomes a negotiator and basically, gravely, and I guess you can call it a grave insult. He insults the sea folk. I guess the insult is so grave that the woman that he insults, what does he call her?
Is it the mistress
daughter
of the boats?
Of the sands?
Mistress of the ships, right? Oh yeah, but that's the insult. He says that she's like something of land, yeah?
Daughter of the sands. And this was one of the memories he pulled
from his past.
From his past lives. So he's using his memories to negotiate with these people. After being called the daughter of the sands, she just lunges at him with a knife. And because Matt is a badass, he calmly deflects it.
But then she's put herself in a bad bargaining position.
Yeah, because she attacked him. And then he uses like a sea folk saying on her.
Yeah.
And the sea folk saying is, I am the master of the blades and my blade is bared.
Yeah.
And she
at that
sees...
point, she would, in sea folk world, at the times when they go to war, like if they're actually fighting on ship, the wave mistress defers to her master of blades.
Mm-hmm. So she immediately, well, temporarily at least, finds Matt as in a superior position and just concedes to his demands at this point.
Mm.
And then Renila was there, and she suspects that the Taviran, trying to make a bargain with the Taviran is like
impossible.
Like impossible. Like you might as well just do whatever they say. It's not going to work. So they get to discuss what they're going to go, where they're going to go next, and after behind Matt's back, the Aes Sedai apologize about Matt's behavior because he just straight up threw the worst insult that he can think of, and was being very adversarial during this discussion, which is just arrange the handover of this bowl. So they apologize on his behalf, and then they all leave, and I'm trying to think of what happens next. Oh yeah, this is important. So this is about the time where they're gathering to leave.
Yeah.
Abu Dar. This is like they finished their mission. Their mission was to find the bowl, get it to the Windfinders, and the only thing Matt is concerned with is getting Elaine to Carrion so she can take the throne. So
that's all he's been trying to do the whole time.
Yeah, he's taken this giant detour, and throughout this book, he's been trying to cut their mission short in any way possible. Which is why he was like helping him look for the thing. He's like, yeah, I just need to do what Rand told me to do.
Yeah.
So finally, he's like, okay, we can get the hell out of here. Where's Oliver? So Oliver is nowhere to be seen. He even at one point asked one of his servants to stay behind and look after him, but this was before he was missing, because he wasn't sure if he was going to take Oliver with him throughout the rest of his journeys. But Oliver is just missing at this point.
Yeah.
So they went and looked around. They went to the big boobed woman's quarters, and he wasn't there.
That's where Oliver loves to hang out. And that is literally her one descriptive feature.
Yeah, she has big boobs. And she let...
you have to like tuck her arms up and underneath her breasts then when she folds her
Of course she does.
Her breasts.
Well, she was also acting kind of as like his
like
teacher,
nurse,
I guess,
or whatever. Yeah.
His nurse, his teacher. Like she was teaching him like, school stuff.
Yeah.
Like, basically like his preschool nurse, whatever you want to call it. Like,
yeah.
Taking care of his learning and his needs.
Yeah.
So
naps.
Yeah. So she told Matt that he did his work for the day, which was just like schoolwork, and he's out and about and said he would be back by sunset. But Matt's just wanting to get the hell out of there. He doesn't want to stay there till sunset. So they go. He gets Nynaeve and Elaine to help him out to go look for him, and says, "Hey, let's look for him." Because at first he was thinking of leaving him behind, but Brigida, I believe, has a soft spot for him.
For Matt, yeah, definitely, and for Oliver.
Yeah, for Matt and Oliver. And the thing we know is that Matt is really loyal to his friends, and he would not want to leave this place with, because he and Brigida have actually built a pretty good relationship over this book. So Brigida is like one of Matt's close friends now, and
Yeah.
Brigida wants to find Oliver.
And she's the one who told the girls like they should thank Matt and apologize for the way they've treated him. Like Brigida's done a lot of good things Matt wise.
Mm-hmm. So Avienda also wants to help out on this. Warders want to help out. So they all storm out and kind of go on a search party. We hear about the search party. Basically, he goes to every big boobs, beautiful woman in the city and asks if they've seen Oliver or not.
What a
That's
nice
basic.
excuse.
Well, that's basically his plan of action. He doesn't plan it, but we do see that that's what he literally does.
Right.
He looks for a beautiful woman, and he asks if she's seen Oliver, who's wearing a red coat. At one time, another child wearing a red coat was mistaken as being Oliver, but it was some other kid.
Yeah.
All right, so there's kind of like I don't know what you call it, a stirring in the city.
Yeah. Because the sunshine are here now, aren't they?
Yeah, so the first sign of trouble is out in the water. They see some burning ships. And off in the distance, they see some additional ships approaching.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, so everyone is starting to panic. We see people running in all directions. And Oliver still has not been found. So we get some pretty cool descriptions here of chaos, of Damane doing their thing. And I don't want to get too into it because it's just him running around the city, him reaching a dead end from a legion of troops or a group of Damane. Eventually, he scatters off down an alleyway of some sort, and a wall falls on him.
Well, yeah, they're like, so basically what's happening here is the Sunshine are invading.
Yeah, there's an invasion. So
and
he's
they're
running.
Just caught up in it.
Yeah, everyone's scattering. It's chaos. It's almost like a riot.
And they're blasting everything.
Yeah, they're destroying the town. He's running. Everyone's trying to escape.
Yep.
He's split up from everybody. He's on his own.
Still trying to find Oliver, but to no avail.
Yeah, the Shantran are marching in the streets.
And flying overhead and blowing stuff up with lightning.
Yeah,
which no one's ever seen before, right? Not like this.
It's chaos.
Yeah.
And his point of view ends with a wall falling on him, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Because
the
power wasn't used.
We hear from Matt for a while.
Yeah, and the power wasn't used against him directly. That's the key point.
Yeah. So he did feel it go cold, his medallion, but in the instance where the wall fell, it was not an instance where the power was used directly on him. Quickly, next chapter is Spears. It's Galena's point of view, so we get to hear about her getting tortured.
Oh, yeah. Oh, goody.
Yeah, she's a freaking dark friend. Great. So Galena was captured by the Shido.
Oh, yeah, I remember this part. This was really good.
Because this happened, she was technically captured by them, like, back at the end of the last book, but just we've not been following them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get to see a few, like, introductions of things. I think we get the brotherless introduced in this chapter. They become a little bit more important later on in the series. But Galena is basically being tortured. She's being pushed physically to the edge because she's, of course, not used to how Aiel move, and they move by running everywhere.
Yeah, and she's wrecked.
And Aes Sedai are not used to that type of physical activity. Not only that...
more like intellectuals.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we hear about her punishments, like what happens if she spills water that she's
Yeah.
forced to drink. She's running barefoot. Her hands are tied together. She's being shielded 24/7.
Yeah.
And she has declared something called a datsang.
Yeah. And that thing is very different from Gashan.
Yeah, they wear the opposite colors. They wear black.
Yeah. And
And
they're like a Gaishan is like someone who chooses to serve you. It is a servant, but not really. But Dashang, it means like that you're outside Jiitoch.
yeah, you're basically a slave at that point.
Yeah. Like
Okay.
less than a person.
A
They
prisoner.
wouldn't call you property though. They don't see it the same way that the Shanshan do. But you are
No, it's
literally
more
less.
like
You
you're
are less than
imprisoned.
human.
It's like it's more of a penal thing than a
Yeah.
slavery thing.
Correct. Exactly true.
Okay.
Outside
So,
of honor.
yes. So while this is happening, we get a Savannah point of view. She's one of the
I
chosen.
hate her. She's so annoying. I hate her.
So
I know people like
Savannah,
her.
yeah, she wants
I bet we got a lot of
she
us
wants
do.
to break Galena out,
What?
and well, doesn't she want to
No,
get?
no, no, no.
Oh,
She
no, no,
wants
no, not
to.
Savannah. No, I'm sorry. Savannah
Savannah
is
wants to break Galena. She wants
break
to
Galena.
make her like obedient to her, so that because Savannah is the one thing Savannah can't do is she can't channel. She's a wise
No.
one who can't channel. But she's
Yes.
realized that she needs that, so Galena can channel. So she wants to make Galena like her gun, her
Yes.
weapon.
So yeah. So she wants to do. So what happens is Kadar shows up, which is Samael under the Mask of Mirrors,
Yeah.
and he basically tells Savannah that you could do anything you want if you use this, and he gives her an oath rod, or at least shows it to her,
Yeah.
and lets her know that you can make any type of binding oath with this.
Yeah.
And this is where he starts his little trick, right?
With the
And
boxes.
yeah, so he hands out some boxes. He creates urgency by telling Savannah that they are currently about to be surrounded by Ranzail forces,
Hmm.
and that they need to escape using these boxes.
Yep.
And that because he's Jordan is very subtle with this. He gives them these boxes, and he tells them that they could move out of the area and into a more advantageous position if they use these.
Yep.
Because they're not the Aiel aren't about fleeing. They do wish
Yeah.
to fight. They just don't want to fight in a disadvantageous position. So he gives them these boxes,
Yeah.
and these boxes eventually will allow them to move.
Yeah. They create gateways, or they think they create gateways using them.
Yeah, so he tells them you need to move immediately. Rand's forces are on the way.
Yep. So all these gateways open, and they go through.
Yep, and then we get the point of view of an Aiel
warrior.
named Merrick,
Yeah.
and he is moving some of his warriors through these gateways.
He was going to be the new Kuladin,
Yeah,
but she kept it not happening because she wanted to be still chief. And as soon as a new clan chief is called, like her little power trip would be over.
yeah, because he wanted to go to Roydan
Yeah.
someday to be the Shido clan chief.
Savannah's trying to stop it happening because as soon as that happens, if he succeeds, her power trip would be over.
Yeah.
But anyway. But luckily, she doesn't have to worry about that because of what happens now.
Yeah, so while they're transporting these Shido through the gateways, one just closes.
Yep.
And it dismembers a bunch of at first Merrick doesn't know what to do. but as this gateway closes, they see approaching forces of both Aiel and Wetlanders
Yeah.
coming into attack.
So basically, they're in the worst possible position. They've
Yeah.
been betrayed.
So I guess you gotta kind of think about the motivations here. The thing that I came to a conclusion is that he was tricking the Shido into becoming fodder
Yep.
for his defense of Ilion.
Well, he just wants them destroyed.
And he wants them to become fodder as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a two birds with one stone.
Two birds,
right?
one stone. Yep, agreed.
So yeah, he ends up placing these Shido in, I guess, strategic positions in order to be fodder to help slow down Rand's armies.
Yeah.
And the Shido don't know this at all. They're just kind of caught
think
up
they're
in this
fighting
trick.
random people.
Yeah. Well, not random. They know that it's Rand's forces, but they don't know that Rand's forces are actually en route to attack Ilion. Because they're
on the other side of the planet.
Yeah, he told them that, oh yeah, Rand's forces are about to attack you. You need to get out of here. So
yeah,
he
those could have been anybody. They could have been anybody. He just put them in a. I mean, you're absolutely right, because Samael is a genius of defense. That's exactly what he's done. He's used one problem to solve another problem. But he could have put them anywhere. And if someone charged up with a bunch of cavalry, the Shido would have fought them no matter who they were. And they try and use the boxes to get back out, thinking that they're going to work, but the boxes are just fake.
Yes. Yeah, they try to press the button and nothing happens.
Correct.
Okay, so next we get Grandal's, a little clip from Grandal. And she explains how...
yeah, this is just the explanation.
He introduced these items in a word that's in the old tongue, and he called them full boxes. And she's like, oh, that's pretty, I don't know.
On the nose?
Yeah, pretty much. Next, we get a quick view of Shidar Haran, who was
he was watching them.
Yeah, he was spying on them. And that's it. He's just basically spying on them.
Well, just a couple of things about that, I think, just really, really quickly. Once again, we see that the Shadow is the puppet of the puppet of the puppet. Yeah, like I did with Alader and Masana. This is, again, the Dark One, Shidar Haran. They think they're running things, but actually they're not. They're being run themselves. They're being spied on. They're spying on others. They're tricking the Shido. The Shido are trying to trick Rand. It's everyone's fooling everyone, and that's the big difference between the evil side and the good side. The good side misunderstand each other sometimes, but then they'll risk their lives to go and rescue some random kid called Oliver. Whereas the dark side are all trying to manipulate each other and are never fully working with each other. And in the end, that is why they will lose.
Totally. Yes. Totally.
Yeah.
So next chapter, 41, the Crown of Swords.
And this is it.
This is it? No, there's one chapter after this.
Oh, is there? Okay.
Yeah, it's a short chapter. Okay, so Rand is recovering from his ordeal of getting stabbed by Fane. He recovers, wakes up. Min is present there, hasn't left his side. And there's some other Aes Sedai who had been monitoring him as well. And Cad Swain was there also. So there were actually a big argument that happened while he was recovering, and some Aes Sedai and Ashraman were just like holding the power and staring at each other as if they were about to attack each other over...
That's not going to end well.
No, but I'm not sure what the argument was, but it sounded like it had something to do with the, observing Rand or making sure he's doing better. Like they don't trust each other. That's for sure.
Probably with good reason.
Okay, so there's a report that's coming back from the front lines. And this is something I thought that was a bit neglected throughout this book, is because we really don't hear anything about the movement of these troops. Well, we do, but there's not a whole lot of attention paid to
Yeah,
this part of the book.
it's definitely tell, not show, which is
Yes.
eh,
Because I remember reading this, I was like, huh? There's like an army like fighting at Ilion. I was like, okay. It seemed a little abrupt to me, like
yeah.
there wasn't proper setup. But
Oh, I wasn't the only one who was confused for a change. Wow.
No.
no,
But the thing
you
is,
were also.
the thing is, this book is called Crown of Swords. The whole book's meant to be about going at Samel, but then Rand instead does like a little bit of a pretend, like he's not going to fight Samel maybe, and Samel does his like, "Would you like an alliance with me?" And he's like, "No." And so then Rand goes off to Kerheim and Camlin and does his bits over there, as if he's ignoring it, and then he like, but then it's suddenly at the end goes, "Oh, by the way, this was all distraction. I am actually really interested in that," and goes back and just deals with it in one fell swoop, which is a bit bizarre.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when the report from Adley is given back, and basically they're reporting that Samael as a channeler is actually pretty damn powerful, and they're having
Yep.
a lot of problems with him. He's
He's only
actually
one tier
obliterated.
down from like Demadred and Ishmael. He's like just the very next level.
Yeah, but he's still super strong.
Yeah, but I mean they're the most powerful ever. So
Yes. So
yeah,
he's wreaking havoc, and they're not able to contend with his power very
no.
well. He is destroying the front lines. They're not making any progress. And Rand hears of this and wants to step in and can like step into the action. Men, well, basically he asks of men to distract the maidens because, of course,
Doesn't want to
Rand
risk
doesn't.
women.
Yeah, no, he never wants to bring the maidens with him. But I understand it. He's kind of wants to do more. This is more of a face-off more than anything. But even though he does bring some troops with him, but anyway, he asks men to distract, and um, he goes to Bashir's camp via Gateway, and he assembles a small strike force to take with him. Well, I don't know if you call it small. I think it was like some or so troops. That's not very small,
Just
but
a few thousand horsemen, a few thousand crossbowmen. He was counting.
he brought a lot of crossbow people, which was at the time in this book was kind of like an unorthodox method, bringing that
Yeah,
many crossbowmen.
it's Matt who got the crossbow thing going, isn't it?
Mhm. So he makes a gateway um, to a large gateway so he can get all of these people into like some type of square in the city, like
Yep.
right in the middle of the city.
hmm
And when he gets there, he immediately spreads the power throughout the city to set off wards so that Samael won't know exactly where he is in the city. And after he does this, Samael actually uses that one power that we've seen, like Aes Sedai use, where you basically speak and you amplify your voice.
Yep.
And he makes a personal challenge to Rand.
Yep.
Um, what ends up happening, because he gets goaded into going to
Shadar Logoth.
Shadar Logoth.
But that actually suits him because it means like if we fight here, all my people might die, your people might die, but it's really just me and you that this
yeah,
is
because
about.
he only went by himself.
So he's like, let's go out to a place where our armies won't die. And so Rand's like, yeah, sure.
So he goes into Shadar Logoth. Samael is not alone. He actually has a force of Trollocs in the city.
Yeah, he wasn't going to fight fair.
No. So he's there by himself. contending with Trollocs and with Samael. And during this fight, it's that time of the day where it gets dark, and Mashadar ends up materializing and starts causing a bit of havoc.
Yep.
So during this fight, you see Mashadar attacking Trollocs, and Rand also finds Leah.
Yeah. Who he took her Shadow Logoth last time.
Yeah, Leah was the one maiden that Rand had lost.
Well, one of there was a few who got lost, and we were assuming they were all
Oh,
dead.
this is one. I thought it was just her.
No,
That's the only one.
there's a group that go, and there's a few that go missing, but she's the only one that we ever hear of again, and she's the only one that's named.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
But yeah, she's back. She's fighting with the Trollocs, and when she sees Rand, she recognizes him and flees.
Yeah.
And Rand does fight some Trollocs and some Murdral, and he uses his, I think, fire sword to deal with them.
He
And
does.
while he's distracted, Samael uses the power to throw lightning at
Yeah.
Rand.
You use a sword, I'll attack you with lightning bolts.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
fair.
During a lot of this sequence, Rand is in the void,
Yeah.
trying to ignore the pain, because previously, before he jumped into Shadow Lorgoth, he got attacked with like some type of burning filament attack,
Okay.
which burnt through his heel. So he's actually pretty battered at this point. Um, during his fight with Samael, uh, he's on some like shaky ground, and the floor gives way,
Yep.
and he catches a ledge before he goes tumbling down. And at that point, a man that he doesn't recognize extends his hand to help him up off of the ledge.
Yep. I don't choose to see you die today.
Yeah, that's what the man says to him. And he doesn't know who this is
Nope.
at this point. We begin to figure it out later on. So he
Who is it?
and
I don't remember.
because
It's
they don't say
Moradin.
who it is. Yeah, it's
Oh, it is?
Moradin. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So like
they,
this is again the bad side, like screwing themselves.
Right. It's funny. It's funny, but too, as a little side note here, I have the captions turned on, and when it's getting like all of the characters' names and the place names wrong.
Of course it is.
Oh yes, of course. Like, what is it saying for Shadow Logoth?
Oh, it said shatter log off.
We need a log off, not a fight off, not a face
What
off.
about Samuel?
Surely Samuel for that.
Yeah.
All right, so they're fighting like back to back, just tossing bellfires out, and
Yeah,
at
as
one
you do.
point, the bellfires intersect.
Oh, don't cross the streams.
Yeah, so
Yep.
they cross the streams. Rand gets disoriented.
It jars them.
Yeah, it basically
shakes
has the same effect as crossing the streams.
Yeah.
So what happens is Samael takes advantage. I think he uses like some distract. He tries to distract them and flee. And then at this point, the mysterious man leaves Rand's side, and he gives him some advice about Samael. And at this point, who is contemplating, because he saw the man throwing out bellfires, but he couldn't sense any channeling coming from him.
And that's why we know it was Moradin.
Yeah, because he was using the
true power.
So Rand tries to get a vantage point. He goes to the top of a tower to look over the area. He expects to find Samael.
Yep, and he's prepping to kill him.
Yeah, he's about to bellfire him. And then he sees Mashadar, and 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 he sees
going for
like
Leia.
gaining on descending, and he's about to channel to kill Samael, and then he hears Leia being attacked, and he sees Leia, and there's a tendril of Mashadar that's wrapped around her leg, and she's frozen in place. She can't move, and she's screaming. And instead of letting Leia succumb to her fate, Rand decides to put her out of her misery with a bellfire. So he mercy kills Leia instead of letting her suffer. Because from what has been described as being killed by Mashadar, it's pretty
horrific.
horrible.
However, there is an argument that, again, just very, very quickly, that what he did was worse than kill her.
I think that's true.
Because he didn't just
he removed her from the pattern.
Yeah, correct. And if you believe, if the Wheel of Time religion, ethos, philosophy holds up, people get reborn. And so basically, he, instead of letting her die and be reborn, he's removed her opportunity to be reborn.
Yeah. He kills her forever.
And even though she isn't like, Luz Theron or whatever, she would never remember who she was. Like, her soul, if you like, there's definitely the suggestion that everyone's soul is reborn eternally, unless you're balefired. That the Weaver reuses the threads again and again. And so it just shows in a way that Rand doesn't fully understand how dangerous balefire is, despite what everyone's telling him. Remember, it's only been 4 chapters since Kadsun slapped him across the face and said, never use that again. And here he is using it multiple times.
Yeah, and I know during this chapter, when he was contemplating using it, he thought about the slap.
And he does it anyway.
Yeah, so next thing that happens, after he was done with Leia, he looks over to where Samael was, and he's nowhere to be found. Of course, in fantasy literature, no body, no death, but in this instance, Rand believes Samael to be dead because he did not feel him channel a gateway to leave.
Yep.
Which I guess is a legitimate kind of logical thought process there.
Yeah.
But he was nowhere to be found, and he assumed that Mashadar had descended on him. But wouldn't he have heard Samael's screams? That's I don't know. Maybe he just wasn't thinking things through.
The thing is, I think it could be done better than it was done. But yeah,
it was very vague, and I was like, I had to read that part a couple different times to fully
why not just show Mashadar killing him?
Yeah.
Just show Mashadar killing him.
After he assumes that Samael's dead, he returns to the palace in Ilion, and in the Council of 9, well, I guess 8 now, because Samael was Lord Brend, right?
Yeah.
He was one of the counselors of 9.
Yeah.
They await Rand. The king is gone. He's nowhere to be found. And they believe that Lord Brend had something to do with the missing king. So the Council of 9 offer the position of king to Rand, and they crown him king of Ilion with the crown of swords. And I think during this, they're just like saying, chanting, Elo Thor, King of Ilion. And I think one of the Ashaman, forget which one, says, Randall Thor, King of the World.
Yeah.
So the crown of swords refers to this crown, which I believe it pricks him, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, because it has some of the swords point up and some point down, and it's meant to remind you that you can't be in power without threat. It's a precarious position to be in.
That sounds like the throne of the 7 kingdoms in Song of Ice and Fire a little bit.
Yeah, it's absolutely that same theory.
Iron Throne.
And and they're not the first people to do that. It goes right back to Crown of Thorns, Jesus Christ, and even before then. But this idea that that the king is in a precarious position. He has all the power, but he's also in a position of great threat. But yeah,
Actually, you're right. That was the last chapter. There
yeah,
is only
Oh,
41
okay.
chapters. I thought there
Yeah,
were 42.
that's kind of that's kind of one of the major themes in the series too, about the burden of leadership, which is why Rand is like trying to take all these challenges onto himself instead of cooperating with others, which he learns to do in the later books.
Mhm.
agreed. And well, he gets worse before he gets better.
That's for sure. Yeah.
Because you're absolutely right. This is a precursor to, well, actually, what works best is when I go on my own. Because when I go on my own, only I am risked, and then I win anyway. And then so this is teaching him bad lessons.
Yes.
Yeah, that end up screwing him over.
Yeah.
But yes, I agree. If there's anything that is poorly handled in the book, it is the fact that the war in Ilion, we don't even really see it. It's just kind of happening, and we're supposed to remember that. And then at the end of the book, the climax is all Ilion and Samael, even though for much of the book, Samael is missing. But I assume that Jordan again is trying to show us that actually a general is rarely present in his battles.
Okay.
Yeah, like a lot of wars like are fought with captains and colonels, and the actual commander is not physically present on the field.
Right.
But yeah, I think as a book, that's one of the things it misses. It misses out
Yeah. Yeah. Good point.
for sure. So you mentioned you found it a bit confusing, and Dusty as well, and I think that's a legitimate criticism of the book. What are your highlights of this book, guys? Now that we're finished it.
I like. I would say my favorite parts are all the little schemes with the Dark Friends and all
Okay.
their like communications with each other and fucking each other over and all the stuff with them.
Okay. Oh, is Dusty gone?
Oh, I'm
Oh,
back. I kept up to. I got disconnected, but since I got the subtitles, I was reading that while I was getting back in.
okay. Okay.
Dusty, what's been your highlight of the book,
Oh, my highlight.
or
I would
highlights?
say I really enjoyed the reuniting of Lan and Nynaeve
Agreed.
and her becoming like unlocking her potential. I guess
Agreed.
what I mean by unlocking potential is that the block was kind of a major
It was.
issue that was going on with her. And I like that the girls are asserting themselves. So um, in the last book, Elaine and Nynaeve were not treated the best by their
No.
fellow Aes Sedai,
No.
and now they're really starting to come into their own by being leaders instead of followers,
Yep.
and they're getting things done.
Yep.
And I think I would say this story is mainly about, as far as like character progression from, I think there's a lot of progress with Nynaeve and Elaine in this book. I think this is kind of their book to progress. Matt,
Yep.
For sure.
I liked his story. It wasn't really him progressing because we didn't see him get any upgrades or anything, but they did throw him into the situation with Thailand that I found pretty entertaining.
Very
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. He becomes a sugar baby.
And also, I think one of the things really interesting about that is how rarely that's been done.
Yes.
So to have someone take that on is interesting, and I think that, like, when you've read as many books as we have, especially fantasy books, there's a lot of tropes that are done well or done poorly, and it's rare to have something where I'm like, well, I've not seen someone do this.
Mhm.
I think Jordan did that there. I think what you said there, Dusty, like Nynaeve is my favorite female character in the Wheel of Time, and I think this is one of her best books. For her, like you say, as I said, I think this is the fulcrum moment for her character that splits her from early Nynaeve to late Nynaeve, where she figures out that she is capable of surrendering control. And I
Yeah.
think it allows her to improve her relationships with all the key players, with Rand, with Egwene, and with Lan. And I love the Lan and an evening romance. It's my favorite romance in the books, and I just love everything about that. That was such a cool moment for me. Really, really loved it. Great payoff. I think the Golem is the most dangerous and most sinister villain for me. I find him even better than the Black Wind or Mashadar or Padden Thane or even Ishmael. I think the Golem is just this idea of this unstoppable, slow moving but unstoppable force that will just come and find you and kill you, and you cannot stop it. Magic doesn't stop it. Swords don't stop it. Walls don't
Yeah.
stop it. I love that.
It's
That
like
sort
the
of
nemesis from Resident Evil.
correct. And so I
Yeah,
just think
yeah.
all you can do is flee it. And I just think that is a great bad guy. It just
For sure.
it's the thoughtless bad guy. It's the one that doesn't have humanity. It's not the
Mhm.
Glocta, with all like the
Yeah.
Oh, the only one who can
humanness.
make him flee at the moment is Matt, but Matt's the only one right now.
But it's
Like,
only
Yeah.
because of that blinking fox head medallion. Otherwise, Matt would be kindling to it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Golem's a little bit like the Terminator too.
yeah,
Mhm.
He won't
but
stop
yeah,
in his mission.
especially in the first Terminator movie, just that
Mhm.
idea of I will just not stop. I will just not stop.
Mhm.
So I think that's a really cool introduction, and I do love the
the culture of Abadar was also pretty interesting. You know?
yeah, like with the duels.
Yeah, the duels, the you can get stabbed by women. They're willing to stab you.
And it's fine. Even though in other parts of Randland, women doing anything to do with blades is just bizarre, and yet here it's completely normal. It's
And we
it's another
and we had like some pretty good Shan Chan stuff too. Like we
yeah, the
forget that.
invasion happens here. I forgot about that.
Well,
It's
that's not the
huge.
only invasion because we forgot that early in the book, Altara got invaded.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
They're taking over, and it's something I didn't expect to happen in the books. I thought the Shan Chan would be beaten.
Well,
Like,
Altara was out of the blue for me for sure. Like,
mm,
how are the Shan Chan just attacking Altara right now? That's kind of
well,
crazy.
but it has a coast. They're just attacking all along the coast. Altara is
Yeah,
here. Abu Dar is here. They're just going bang. Instead of
yeah.
landing in one spot like they did at Falme, they're landing at multiple.
Well,
But
Altara was probably the most heavily like militarily guarded because it's
yeah,
the home of
the
the
white
White Cloaks,
cloaks.
and they just got completely decimated.
They did, but
Which
that's because
seems
they
like
don't have
with
the power.
these. Well, yeah, they don't have
Yeah.
the power.
But that's one of the things is this is the thing the Shonchan bring is they are the first nation who use the power as a weapon of war. And what they're showing is the old ways won't work anymore. Yeah.
Threat, and that they have to have some other way to contend with this threat. Because
And that
everybody is having problems with the Shan because the power as a weapon in war wasn't really a thing.
no.
Aes Sedai couldn't use it as a weapon.
And that's why with Dumai Wells and with the invasion of the Shonchan, we can see that we are in a new world now.
Well,
And
yeah, because Aes Sedai can't use it, and then wise ones wouldn't participate in war, and that has all changed.
yeah. And that's
Yeah.
why later on, I know we're not there yet, but like one of the 5 captains that we don't get to see do much for ages is Rodel Iterold.
That's Rodel Aitoralda.
We don't get to see him for ages, but when we do see him, he's fighting the Shonchan without the power and doing
Yeah,
it a
he's
good
pretty
job.
badass.
That just shows how freaking awesome he is. But
Yeah,
yeah.
Rodel Aitoralda is probably one of my favorite great captains. I guess
Oh,
him and
but just
I have a thing for the Shinarans. They're
yeah.
always pretty awesome.
But if I think if Pedron Nial had not been murdered just before the invasion of the Shonchan, things could have been very different.
Maybe.
Because they were bringing him a warning, like literally bringing him a warning about that kind of thing when he gets killed. So the White Cloaks are in uproar. They're not organized when it all happens. And he was smart. He would not have charged the White Cloaks into lightning.
Yeah, he was pretty pragmatic. I know if you think about book 2, where Bronharald just went crazy and charged like a
Yeah,
bunch of what he thought were Aes Sedai. I don't think that's something
no.
um,
Niall would not
that
have done
Pedro
so.
Nile would have done. No, he
He
would have
was a
been more
great captain for a
pragmatic.
reason. So yeah, interesting book. And now, of course, one of the consequences of this book is that Rand is now king of like 4 different places. He's got Tyr, he's got Ilion, he's got Camlin, he's got Carhine, and these are some of the most important countries going.
Yeah,
He's,
those are like the biggest powers of Randland, right?
yeah,
So,
Yeah, for sure.
but not necessarily
like
the
we're
best
talking about,
militaries because we
well,
doesn't have the
yeah,
borderlands. Where are
that's
the
minus the
borderlands?
Borderlands. Well, the Borderlands, we like in the prologue of the next book, kind of tells us what's going on with them.
Well, kinda, but yeah. And it's weird. I remember thinking, why aren't they all like, swearing fealty to Rand? This is like what they've been waiting for. And it's really interesting to see how that all plays out. But anyway, that will wait.
So this is the official start of the slog. Do any of you feel slogged?
Not yet, man.
I think I was talking in our previous episodes in this book about how I would definitely say that I found this book to be less of a slog in my first reread this time than I did the first time I read it. Because like I mentioned before, most of it was that I noticed some things that I missed before because there's so much fucking going on throughout this book and the entire series that I definitely missed a whole lot of it in my first read. So a lot of the stuff that's going on in the background, I'm sure I missed a whole lot of it still, but I caught more of that this time. So that's mostly what made it more interesting to me.
And some of the people call it slog are just like, we don't need the bowl of winds. I'm like, well, what do you mean? And they're like, well, it's just a MacGuffin. They make up a problem and solve it. But the point is that the idea that the Dark One is killing the land is actually more dangerous than an army invading, because if your planet dies, it doesn't matter who won the fight. And so, like, I don't know. I find the idea of him controlling the summer and the winter is like the meta fight that's happening above the swords and arrows fight that's going on the
Yeah, we
continent.
have to remember too, like things get worse and worse and worse. Like I remember further in the book where they're having extreme food shortages and
Yep.
all the food just gets rotten immediately. And there's
And
like
later
a
on, he tries winter, doesn't he? Even when they cure the summer, he's like, well, if you're going to cure my summer, I'm going to hit you with a winter. You'll wish you had summer.
Yeah,
Like,
one of my most memorable like Dark One direct effects was like the zombie town.
oh, yeah, the bubbles of evil.
Yeah, those bubbles are always super unexpected and
My favorite one of those is the cards.
when Matt fights the cards.
When the cards come alive and like the kings and the jacks all like stab out with their swords. He's like, dang it.
Oh yeah, that was interesting.
Just like bubbles of evil are just like Jordan had a weird dream and he's like, how do I get this in? That will be a bubble of evil. Anyway.
Yeah.
It's gone 3, so I'm probably gonna call it, guys.
All right, man. Well, thank you very much for having this discussion with us. Path of Daggers.
Path of Daggers.
I'm barely into the second chapter, so it's going to be a while before we start.
Well, you know what they say: on the heights, all the paths are paved with daggers. Sean Chan saying, man. Sean Chan saying.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
it's
maybe
likely we'll probably speak sooner about Mistborn.
Yeah.
I was gonna say we could probably talk about Hero of Ages in probably about a couple weeks if that's cool.
Yeah, Hero of Ages is let's do that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to listening to that again.
Cool.
Hero of Ages is a great book.
It is, for sure.
Anyway. One of these days, Andrew, you're gonna have to be able to get through Elantris.
Yeah.
Because if you want to cover the Cosmere, you got to cover that book.
I told you I didn't like it. I know you really want me to like it though.
No.
I think if you got to the end, you would actually like
someone
it.
should make a clip, from one of our chats that's Dusty really wants Andrew to like Elantris.
and just have him repeating it. You should read. You should read if you want to understand the Cosmere. You should read. You should read if you want to understand the Cosmere. No, but the thing is, what you should do is when you do read it, if you ever do, like read it as a critique. Like say, I'm gonna tell you why this book is clearly Sanderson's first Cosmere novel and not his last, and what he would be doing better if he was doing it now. And then maybe you'll find it more interesting doing it as a literary critique.
He's criticized some aspects of it himself too.
Oh, Sanderson is not embarrassed to say that his books could be better. As long as it's done in a polite way, he has no problem with criticism.
Yeah.
And another reason I love the dude.
One thing I like about like his special edition of Warbreaker is like every chapter has an analysis on it.
Yeah, because he wrote Warbreaker and actually posted it as he was writing it, didn't he? Online with the fans. I've never known anyone do that, but he did. And like that's an author who's truly letting you into his process, which is really vulnerable, right? You're really like opening yourself up for a lot of criticism there. And basically people can pirate your book. So he was kind of risking no one buying it, but luckily,
well, he did that with the Sands book because he completely, like, if you're signed up to his like newsletter, you get his whole Sands.
He sends you White Sands, but White Sand has never been published, so.
Well, not by him. I know there's a comic book version that I have.
I own it, but and that is with him, but it's he obviously doesn't do comics, but what he's done is he's collaborated.
He gave him the story, and they
so
made
that
a
will
comic
come
out of
out. And he said, I want that story out, but it would take too long for me to rewrite the book in prose form. Anyway, I've really got to keep to my word, but great.
Yeah,
love talking to you guys. Meeting it in 4.5 hours. So.
Okay.
Ciao.
All right. Always good to talk to you, man. Talk to you again soon.
Agreed.
All right.
See ya.
You take it easy. All right, Andrew. What have you been reading?
Well, yesterday I read this really interesting and funny book called On Cussing, which is kind of it's a short one, but it was kind of a historical analysis of different ways that swearing has been used and kind of like recommendations of how to swear more creatively. So that was really cool. I highly recommend that one.
Do they recommend reading Gentlemen Bastards?
Yeah, I would say so. That's a good way to learn some creative swears too.
That and Joe Abercrombie. He's not as creative as the Gentlemen Bastards, but he does come up with some that are funny.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I also, of course, I also reread Dune because you, Parker, and I are going to talk about it tomorrow. And like a lot of fantasy and science fiction movies that I enjoy, I liked it more in my second read than I did in my first read especially because I've read other books in this series and the prequels, so I know more of the backstories of some of the characters and some of the stuff that happens. So I thought rereading that was really interesting too, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that tomorrow, of course.
Yeah, like I haven't been able to reread it because for some reason this book is in high demand at my library, so I haven't been able to get a hold of it. There were like, what was it? Out of 37 copies, they're all checked out.
Holy crap! Wow.
And we're talking about 37 ebooks and 40 audiobooks.
Wow.
I think because the movie came out recently, it received a spike.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
But I remember it quite well. I remember, so I don't think it'll be a hindrance of not having read it.
Yeah, it's a fairly simple story, that first book too. There's just like since you and I have read more books in the series, we know more of like the details of what goes on, and in the prequels especially, there's a lot of backstory of some of the characters and some of the historical events that gives it
Yeah.
a lot more interesting context.
Yeah, and then we could talk about the Gamjabar scene and the Hizat Sadarak or whatever that.
Yeah,
There's so
yeah,
many words
yeah.
that they kind of make up.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
A lot of the terminology in the world building, I understood it better this time because I've read other books in the series.
Yeah, I'm having a little trouble in Dune 5 because I don't know. They keep talking about this no technology, like no ships and no globes, and I have no idea what those things are or what they
Oh
mean.
yeah. I think I might be confused about that, but I think that's just weird names for like what they actually are. Like a no ship is a spaceship. It seems that way to me or something.
Well,
I think
it's supposed to be. It sounds like it's a special type of spaceship, though, and I don't know what the specialness
yeah. Yeah,
of it
that's a good
is.
point. Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
don't
there's.
know.
It's a
Sorry,
pretty
go
simple
ahead.
story, though, right? It's just
Yeah.
like I understand. I remember the plot. Like
Yeah.
there's Leto. He comes to Arrakis because there's some trouble there, and then his son is being tutored by Mentat and Gurney Halleck, and the doctor ends up betraying Leto, and he dies, and
Hmm.
the family has to go into hiding, and they flee, and they get taken in by the Fremen, and they fulfill a prophecy, and
Yep.
there's
And
the
he
whole
fulfills his
Kitsats.
destiny of the hero's journey and becomes the Messiah, basically.
Yeah, and he becomes a worm rider. There's worm sign, Shai Hulud, and all that, and
Hmm.
the weirding way.
Yeah.
You watched the movie, right?
I've seen part of it. I want to talk about that tomorrow too. That and I saw the like the newer kind of like made for TV adaptation too, which
I need to rewatch that one. I
uh,
remember that's like the Sci-Fi Channel one.
yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, we should talk about how those compare to the books too. Yeah.
yeah. And then yeah,
And
the funny thing about the movie is like the weirding devices where they gotta like "Arrgh," and they like yell stuff and it shoots.
yeah, oh yeah, I was listening in the because I was re-listening to the Legendarium episodes about the book yesterday and the day before. They were talking about how that specific technology isn't even in the books.
No, the weirding way is just like a fighting technique.
Yeah, I
Like it,
attack you with my voice. Ah,
yeah, the weirding way is, I guess, like Bene Gesserit have like this strange like kung fu way of fighting where it seems faster than what it is.
yeah,
That's all it is. It's just like a hand-to-hand combat. And in the movie, they make the weirding devices, which have nothing to do with the books. It's just some weird thing that they threw in there. But I liked that they made the Bene Gesserits bald and that they made all the Mentats have big ass bushy eyebrows. I thought that was a interesting touch.
yeah. Um, I think I might have mentioned last week too that I also I because I've been reading some of the prequels. I read this um, one in a new because there are a lot of different prequel series that Brian Herbert co-wrote, and this one is in the Legends of Dune series. So I think I was telling you about this. This one is the Butlerian Jihad, which is what it's probably my favorite Dune book other than the first one and maybe the fifth one because it's
Mhm.
about that actual war between the thinking machines and the humans, which is really cool. And there are also these things called Cymex that are kind of like they're kind of like cyborgs, they're robots, but they have detached human brains. And there's all this
Hmm.
really interesting stuff that happens.
Yeah, like I'm really liking book 5. I'm almost done. I just got a couple more hours. But the thing I like about 5 is I actually am able to keep stock of the characters, and they have interesting stories. And as you have what the Gauler, who's back, Duncan Idaho, who's like in every freaking book. Um, and it's interesting
Yeah.
because they look back and some of the terminology has morphed. And, you know, because the tyrant is now the god emperor, it's referred to as a tyrant. And they have like different religions now. And then there's these different races that were kind of scattered. And one of them are like super strong hookers.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
like super
I forgot
hookers.
about that.
And there's a lot of like, interesting enough, there's a lot of sexual like talk. And when I mean sexual,
Yeah.
like one of the Bene Gesserit is like a specialist in sex, and she talks to one of the Thalaxu about
Lilaxu. In the
Flylaxu.
captions, that just said the laxative.
The Flylaxu. So he talks. She has to impersonate like one of the Anat Matres, the super hookers, and
Right.
it ends up being that like the Bene Gesserit are actually more skilled in
Yeah.
like sex than the super hookers are.
Yeah,
And
that's interesting.
he's like asking, do you have the vaginal palpitations or something? And she's like, oh, I can control
Yeah.
any part of my body.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know all
That's what
300 and something positions. And he's like, 300
yeah,
and something? That's not possible.
yeah. Yeah,
I
that's
was
what I
like,
was just thinking of. Like it's a really interesting group of women who have like sexual superpowers. It's like I can do magic. I can do magic with my vagina.
yeah, basically, that's like what she was saying. But I was like, man, and then that was her special skill was
Yeah.
to do that. And I was like, oh, and I just thought it was interesting that one of the powerful factions was like a group of super hookers. I was like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And how much they use that to manipulate people and whatnot. It's really interesting.
Yeah, and there's always all this scheming. Like the scheming is like probably the most important, interesting parts of that
Yeah.
book. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow, they're really into their schemes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it's interesting like how much the how like you were saying how much things change over the course of the books because they take place over thousands and thousands of years, and how much the cultures change, how much power, who controls what and who has power changes. There are so
Yeah,
many interesting shifting details like that.
yeah, because it seems like in five, there's almost a sense that there's a single Abrahamic religion that got split into three, and they have all these different practices, like because there's a priest, right, and they're raising this girl who can talk to the worms. And then you have the Bene Gesserit, who also believe in the old religion. And then the Thylaxu, they're actually coming to try to convert everybody to the religion. And it sounds like all of the religions stem from the same one.
Yeah,
So that's what
yeah,
I
that's
thought was
interesting
interesting.
too. Yeah, yeah. Um, I also read this book recently called The Book of Lies by Aleister Crowley, and it's like basically supposedly this like religious text or Bible in like what's that called? Oh yeah, occultism. It's like an occult Bible apparently, kind of. And I listened to it, and it was annoying, but I only kept listening to it because there were so many parts that were inadvertent comedy because like the almost the entire book was just an endless sequence of random non sequiturs. Like this one was, I'm probably fucking up the specifics of it, but it was something like a man has less power than he thinks he does, but all men love underage prostitutes. Like what?
What?
What? That doesn't make any sense.
What a
Yeah,
weird
so
book.
It's so weird. I recommend it only for the inadvertent comedy.
Oh man. Well, I know
Yeah.
one of the books on my list is Satanic Verses, which some religious people think it's like some weird satanic Bible, but it's just a
Oh, right.
novel. It's just a
Yeah,
novel.
yeah. I actually have a copy of that book, but I haven't read it. Yeah. I
Yeah,
know
I
it's
just heard,
a novel,
I
though.
heard, I just heard the author's name being recommended by The Ring, Swords and Monsters. I was like, okay,
Oh, okay.
as he talks about it a little bit as a form of fantasy. So I
Right.
was like, okay, I'll check out his book and see if I like it or not. As I always remember that whenever you heard Salman Rushdie in the book The Satanic Verses, people would say, "Oh, that's the devil's book," or "That's like the devil's Bible," and it's
Yeah.
it's just a novel and a fictional story,
Yeah.
which has
Yeah.
nothing to do with Satanism. Like, well, I don't know what it does have to do with Satanism, but it's not like a manifesto or a book to teach people how to be Satanists.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. That's a good
It's,
point. People do that often, where with things that they're outraged about, they misinterpret what they're outraged about and think that it's something that it's not.
yeah, so I did start Madness and Civilization.
Oh yeah, I saw that. What do you think of it so far?
I think listening to Foucault is easier than reading the
Oh, you're
Foucault.
listening to it. Yeah, I bet. Holy shit, man. Like some of the paragraphs I did my last video that I did on his History of Sexuality book, I talked for half an hour about one 2-page long paragraph.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I think, man, so far it's easier to digest. He does get rambly, but I guess since this author, the weird thing about is the narrator sounds Scottish, but he sounds like he has like the cadence and speaking style down.
Okay.
So I don't really get lost when he's basically reading Foucault. Like I understand it more
Oh,
for
okay.
some
Well,
reason.
that's
I don't
good.
know why I have trouble reading it, but listening to it seems to be a lot like way easier.
Yeah, that makes sense. I read that one before. I thought it was an interesting too. If I remember correctly, um, like a long time ago when I was getting recommendations of books by Foucault to read, from Isaiah and from Thaddeus Russell, that one and Discipline and Punish were the ones that they recommended I read before History of Sexuality. So I thought
Mhm.
those ones were a little bit easier to understand the History of Sexuality also.
Yeah, so um
I also oh yeah, I also started listening to a compilation of short stories the other day called
mhm.
Driving Blind, which is a collection of short stories by Ray Bradbury, and I think they're really cool. It's cool that he kind of crosses between a lot of similar genres in a lot of his writing, like in his
Mhm.
short stories and his novels, and he kind of mostly wrote short stories. I think most of what I've read of his are short stories, and he writes some fantasy, science fiction, and horror, and even in some of the collections of short stories, there kind of could be all three of those different genres. And I think he's a really good writer too. All of his work that I've read is really well written and really conceptually interesting from science fiction, fantasy, and horror perspectives.
Yeah, I've only read Fahrenheit 451, but what I did read, he has a very poetic style of writing.
Yeah. I actually haven't read that one yet, but I do have a
You
copy of it.
haven't?
No.
It's pretty good. I liked it. I thought it was really good. You should
I bet I
check it
probably
out
will too.
eventually.
Yeah.
But
So yeah, I definitely read other stuff recently, but I can't remember off the top of my head. So what else did you read?
well, um, Just been working on The Wheel of Time still, and listening wise, what did I just finish? Well, I think we talked. I didn't tell you the Consuming Instinct, the Gad Sad book.
Oh yeah, I saw that you had read that. You gave it. Did you give it like 3 stars?
Yeah, I had some problems with it. Interesting enough, that book was written before I even knew who God Said was. So this was written in like 2010-ish. But some
Oh
parts
yeah, it's
read.
one of his first books, isn't it?
Yes, I know some of the parts. I don't know. I feel like I'm reading like a wannabe Sam Harris at points because there's like,
Yeah, he sounds that way. Like that's one of the reasons that I'm still subscribed to his channel, but I don't watch his videos as much as I used to because I've gotten bored with that whole like reason, science, rationality wins, bro. Those fucking SJWs ruin everything. Gets kind of boring after a while.
yeah. Well, the problem I thought like when he was just sticking to the science concepts and stuff like that, it was phenomenal. But like the whole beginning of the book is him ranting about um like dumb stuff. Like when I say dumb stuff, it I almost feel like he's straw manning because the people he's talking about don't have any type of mainstream credence. So he's often going about, oh, in the social sciences they say that everything is a social construct and blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, yeah, everything isn't a social construct, but there's a lot of social construction in society.
And that like social construct doesn't mean the way what people like Gadsad often say it means. Like even the like people like Foucault who talk or Derrida who talk about social constructs, and even Thomas Sowell, the like conservative or libertarian leaning guy, in his book called Intellectuals and Race, when he defines race, he himself says race is a social construct based on biological characteristics. Like when
Yeah.
people are using this term social construct, unless they're like these fucking dumb SJWs who don't know what the hell they're talking about when they use these terms, that it doesn't mean it means that there are still biological characteristics involved with it. It means like the way we collectively see these categories and their biological characteristics involved with it.
Yeah, it often seems like throughout the book, it's almost as he's preaching like evolutionary supremacy. And what I mean by that is, like he tries to boil down every issue as something that's solved by, or at least, like when it comes to human behaviors. So like every answer, it's like, oh, it's because of evolution. Like there's no, like does a little, he does little to say anything about environmental, um, influences, but yeah, it just seems like he's goes out of his way to be derisive about people who don't matter in his field. So one of the things I noticed too is he's very dismissive about like religions, and he calls them deluded, like
Right. Yeah, that's what I
in the
used to
book.
say when I was a militant atheist.
Yeah, so I'm like listening to this. It's like, yeah, he's like one of those. He's culture warring right now, and if he's just trying to write a science book promoting evolutionary theory, like why is he attacking like super religious people? And it's like, oh yeah, there's no religious scientists and blah 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 blah. It's like, let's talk
Uh,
about the science, man. I don't
oh,
care about the
this
people who are
this this,
criticizing you.
this reminds me. I stopped talking to this guy because he got so fucking annoying. But it was apparently a scientist who commented on my video about Nietzsche, and the title was Nietzsche was wrong about Christianity because I was talking about his book called The Antichrist and saying that I think he made some good points, but then he goes into this. He takes this sort of militant atheist stance about how religion is a poison and it destroys society and that kind of shit. And that's why I said that he's wrong about religion, and I explained what we've talked about many times before, Jonathan Haidt and group selection, and how you can look at some religious values from a secular perspective, and they make psychological and pragmatic sense whether you're religious or not, and they evolved for through our societies through group selection, so they're useful. And then this scientist who commented on my video, he was saying religion is incompatible with science, because I know some scientists who have been part of all of the different religions. Like, I've known Christian scientists and Jewish scientists and Muslim scientists and people in other religions too, and they take their religion hat off when they're doing science. And I said, that shows that religion is compatible with science. They wouldn't be able to be religious and also be scientists if religion were incompatible with science. It shows that they can choose what values to follow given the context.
Yeah, I don't know why some of these like super anti like religious scientists like spend so much time bashing religion. Like, I don't understand. That's why I'm thinking about this book as like, well, if you're like the evolutionary scientist and it's all about survival of the fittest and what works, why is religion still around and why is it so popular?
Yeah.
It's if religion is completely useless. I know he calls it a mind parasite in the book. Like,
Yeah,
whenever he
calls everything
describes
he
it,
doesn't like that. Like,
yeah, whenever he describes,
isn't his whole new book about that? About how like critical race theory and wokeism and whatnot are mind parasites.
I have no idea. Like, I do know that like when he describes stuff like religion or postmodernism, he always does it in negative terms. Like, he
Yeah,
even
he's
talks
one of
about
those public
postmodernism.
intellectuals who always gets postmodernism wrong. He's like, postmodernists say that everything is all relative and there's no truth. I'm like, no, none of them fucking say that, dumbass. Read their fucking books. God damn.
But yeah, basically he espouses stuff like that. And I was like, man, if the whole book is going to be like this, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through it. But thankfully, like, he only spends like a lot of time on that in the first couple chapters, and then he just moves on to talking about like more of the scientific stuff.
Yeah, that would interest me more.
But I was like, so yeah, I gave it 3 stars because there's some good stuff in there, but man, like, I'm just kind of done with the whole science culture war deal. Like, it doesn't, like, why? What's the point? Like, the only reason, like, if I were writing a science book, why am I going to give page space or even head space to critics, knowing that those critics have it wrong? Like, I understand that he's attacking the people that say everything is a social construct. Obviously, that's an idiotic position to take. But then again, why are you going to give that position light by defending against an idiotic position?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
why are you even going to take the time to do that? Like, if someone's going to say something idiotic and obviously false, I'm not going to spend my time writing a book about a super fringe position that
it's like how when Trump was president, all the left-wing news outlets were talking all day long about these awful things that Trump said on Twitter, and then people wrote tons of books about how awful Trump is. That was their whole theme throughout his presidency. Trump bad. Did you know Trump bad? Trump so bad. Isn't Trump so bad? Yeah, Trump so bad.
Yeah, some of them, yeah. Like, some of the Trump books I read were not as like crazy.
Yeah, I liked a few of them, like those Bob Woodward books.
Yeah, he tried to take a more balanced approach, and even he criticized like the Mueller investigation and showed that what the media was portraying it as wasn't exactly how it was.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
Trump was actually pretty cooperative with it, and
Mhm.
but yeah, I
And
like the Mueller book, and I
that
like the one by his niece or whatever. I thought that was
yeah,
good.
yeah, that's what I was just thinking about actually. I was just going to mention that. I think it's called Too Much and Never Enough. Never Enough. That's my favorite book about Trump that I've read because it goes into
It's not
the
even
dark
directly about
psychology.
Trump.
Yeah, well, it goes into the dark psychology of his family history and how he became the man he is today.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is she's a psychologist, so she has, the credibility to talk about these things.
Yeah,
So I thought it was really interesting. I was like, God damn, Trump's dad was an asshole.
yeah, he was terrible.
Like way worse than Trump himself. Like I'm not
Hmm.
even going to debate who was worse. Trump's
Yeah,
dad was a complete piece of garbage.
for sure, for sure.
I don't think Trump is that bad. I think he's just trying to cope with pleasing his father, and it was
Yeah.
obvious that um, pretty sad what happened to
Hmm.
her dad. Like he got pretty much ostracized from the family because he
Yeah.
wanted to do his own thing.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I don't know how I would be able to live in a family like that where your only purpose is to please your dad. It's like, oh, that sounds horrible.
Yeah, definitely, man. Yeah. So have you been reading anything else?
No, that's just what I've been reading recently. Just that. As far as like fiction, I've been mainly sticking with what I've been working on, which is the Wheel of Time stuff, Dune that I just finished, and Harry Potter. I forgot. Uh, I know we talked about Harry Potter offline, off stream, but man, Harry Potter 5, I was like, wow, this is really good.
Cool.
It turned pretty dark. It gave me really strong feelings about the villains of the story and how I didn't like them.
Yeah.
Well, especially Umbridge.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We were talking about that. Yeah, as the Harry Potter books progress, I've been meaning to reread those this year, and I think we were talking about this before. When I do reread the series, I want to watch all the movies too because I haven't seen all of them. And it's cool that as the series progresses, it starts off as a pretty simple children's book, really. But then as the
Mhm.
series progresses, it covers in more and more mature themes, and it gets darker and darker, and it gets more and it gets closer to being high fantasy too, with getting into all this more fantasy world building as the series progresses too.
Yeah, because I know in this one, they explore like the teenage romance that he has, and it's
Oh
like
yeah,
totally awkward and
yeah,
doesn't work very well. And he's like, throughout the whole book, he's super angry about
yeah,
everything,
yeah.
and he doesn't know how to navigate like simple social situations. Like he gets super pissed off at the girl he's dating, and then he doesn't realize that you can't just say, "Oh, I'm gonna hang out with my female friends." Like you can't say that shit around a girl that you're
Yeah.
dating, of
No, I
course.
can't hang out with you. I'm gonna go hang out with her instead.
Yeah. So, and then the movie played that like very differently. Because at the end of the book, they definitely end a relationship because she starts dating someone else, right?
Right, right.
And in the movie, they left that ambiguous. Like there was no breakup. The only thing that happens is that instead of Cho's friend who told Umbridge about the secret meetings, it was Cho herself. But in the movie,
Oh,
they
okay.
made it, oh, she was drinking that potion that makes you tell the truth, so it wasn't fully her fault.
Oh, okay.
That's what they did in the movie, but they never like broke up or anything
Okay.
like they did in the book because it was super awkward. She was always crying, and there was a whole dead boyfriend thing going on. It's like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
pretty complex for a young adult book,
Hmm.
you know. But yeah, there it was, and then there's a lot of stuff they left out of the movie. Surprisingly, like in the book, like Hermione and Ron were both prefects, and Ron was on the Quidditch team, and Harry wasn't. And they had that whole thing going on, and then there was like a combat scene where it was Hagrid versus some of Umbridge's underlings, and then McGonagall got involved and she got messed up. Like that whole combat scene wasn't in the movie.
Oh, okay. I didn't remember
So
that.
yeah, they changed it up a bit and they cut out a lot of stuff, but I thought it was pretty good. Like they did well, I don't know what happens next, but um, they did make Sirius's death seem ambiguous.
I was gonna ask you about that. I was thinking of a way to ask
I
about it
don't
with
think he's
giving
dead.
spoilers because I didn't remember whether that happened at the end of this book or one after.
I don't think he's dead because in the book they made it pretty clear that there's something weird going on with that gate. Um, and then Harry doesn't believe he's dead. In the movie, it makes it seem more that he died and there is no coming back from it.
Okay.
But I think they foreshadowed enough in book 5. I don't believe he's dead. I can tell you that much. You don't have to confirm that or anything, but I just don't believe
I
he's
will
dead.
not confirm or deny.
So yeah, book 5, definitely good. I think, yeah, book 5, it's dark. The villain was excellent. Got me pissed off pretty good. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the next one. I think I'll read that within the next couple of weeks or so.
Cool. Cool,
That
man.
reminds me, I need to put book 7 on hold so I can get it.
Oh yeah, Deathly Hallows.
That's the last one, right?
Yeah, I forget what the sixth one is called. I know 5 is Order of
Half-Blood
the
Prince.
Phoenix. Oh yeah, Half-Blood Prince. Yeah. Oh yeah. That gets more into without revealing any spoilers, it gets more into Voldemort's backstory, I think. Yeah.
Oh. Well, I just want to know what the Horcruxes are. Those are things I've heard about, but I don't know what they are.
Oh yeah, the books 6 and 7 especially definitely get way more into the Horcruxes. They're really heavily involved with Voldemort.
And whenever I hear the word Horcruxes, I'm spelling it in my head Whore. And I'm also wondering if anyone's made like a parody porn that has Horcruxes, like a Harry Potter parody porn with Horcruxes.
I bet someone has. I'm sure someone has at least made Harry Potter porn, but I'm not sure if they've integrated that Horcrux thing. But it wouldn't surprise me.
Because whenever I hear the word whore in another context, in other words, I always look up that version of the word and I'm not disappointed. Like I've looked up hoarfrost as well. I'm also not disappointed when I look that up.
Right.
Horcrux, hoarfrost. Like usually these words will have some type of entry in the Urban Dictionary that are entertaining.
Yeah, I bet.
But yeah, Harry Potter. I was like really, really into it. I was like, oh man, this is. And the weird thing about like Harry Potter, Order of the Phoenix, is that it's. I don't know. It's hard to explain. It seems like the progression of the plot is quite different from the others. Like at least in book 4, there was like some huge contest that was going on, and they're all working. Harry was working to get through that contest. This one, there was no like end goal like there was in the previous book. Because all it was Harry goes to school again, and there's this Order of the Phoenix thing, and there's some dream that he keeps having that he's trying to piece together. And then there's a big info dump at the end of book 5
Oh yeah.
when Dumbledore talks to him about his past, his parents, and there's a lot of like stuff about his past that got revealed, like how Harry's dad was kind of an asshole because he basically bullied Snape. Like
Oh
Harry's
yeah.
dad bullied
And
Snape.
Snape was in love with Lily, and Snape, one of the reasons that he hated Harry's dad is partially because he felt like he stole his girl, right?
Well, that and Harry's dad was a bully. He
Yeah,
was like
yeah,
pretty much an asshole, and we're like,
yeah,
oh wow, like throughout the books, Harry's parents are seen as like, oh, these heroes who died, and they're always kind of portrayed as noble figures, except when the his uncle and aunt are talking about him,
yeah,
but then
yeah,
we see this other side when he has a flashback when he invades Snape's mind and he sees that his dad was kind of a piece of work,
yeah,
and he goes to Sirius and he's like, yeah, well, we were kids. That's what kids do. But Harry doesn't bully anybody, so he's not, he can't really contend with that information. He's like, oh, yeah, he still seems like he was a bit of an asshole.
yeah.
So it paints like his parents differently, which I thought was interesting. And you had that whole trial scene in the beginning. So yes, I liked it. I liked book 6. I thought it was pretty good.
Cool.
Book 5, I mean, not book 6.
Yeah, book 5.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm not down to the computer yet. So did you remember any other titles that you read?
No, but today I was going to start. I'm going to start reading 2 new books today: a nonfiction one and a novel. I'm not sure. I haven't picked a nonfiction one yet, but the novel I was going to start listening to is book 4 in that series I told you about before. I think it's called the Barsoom series because that's what the Martians call Mars in this series, and it's about that character John Carter who goes to Mars, and it's an 11-book series, and the first one was written in the early 1900s, 1911 or somewhere around there, and it's a really interesting series about this character John Carter who goes to Mars and participates in wars between different species of Martians, and it's considered pulp science fiction, but there's actually a little bit of interesting rudimentary world building too, and they're really fast paced because they're pulp fantasy, so there are lots of cool fights and like Martian sword fights and stuff like that. And
Martians
like,
using swords?
yeah, it's pretty cool. And we were talking before too about how there's one movie that we think is based on one book in this series, but not the first 3. I think at least it is called Ghost of Mars, and I haven't seen that movie, but I think it's based on this series.
Okay, because I thought one of the movies had John Carter in the title.
Yeah, I think it's called John Carter, Ghost of Mars, something like that.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Well, I need to. What's the name of that cussing book that you mentioned?
Oh, it's called On Cussing.
On Cussing. Who's it by?
Yeah, it's I'll look it up. It's really short too. The whole audiobook is only like an hour long.
Oh, that's tiny.
Yeah. Or as a physical book. Oh, Catherine Dunn is the author, and the physical book is only 64 pages long, or the ebook.
Okay, I'll see if I can find that. Sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely worth reading.
All right. Well, I think we could go ahead and do our wrap up. You can go ahead and do any plugs you need to do.
All right. Yeah, if people want to, they can check out my YouTube channel, which I kind of alluded to a few times, which is Mindgasms, where both Dusty and Tristram are talking with me about the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson. And Dusty also participates with me in my other book chats with Parker, and we're going to talk about Dune tomorrow, as I mentioned. And he also participates in my movie chats with Chris and Shizan, and we're going to do another one of those on Grandma's Boy next week. And I also make videos about philosophy, as I mentioned, and talk about many other subjects. And people can also check out my blog if they want to, which is at mindgasms.bplifetime.com, where I publish chapters of my novel that I'm writing about basically about assassins who are trying to rescue a guy's wife and child who have been kidnapped, and also short stories and poems that I've written, and blogs based on my friend's backpacking trip to Africa, and about philosophy and history and many other topics. And also, if people want to, they can give me money on Patreon at Mindgasms, which I'd greatly appreciate. And they can find me on the social medias, Twitter and Facebook at Andrew Mindgasms or Andrew Meintzer. Or no, wait, that's Twitter and Instagram at Andrew Mindgasms or Andrew Meintzer, and Andrew Meintzer on Facebook. Meintzer is my weird German spelled last name with my Canadian pronunciation of it.
All right, man. And also, I'll have a link to his Twitter if you want to follow him on Twitter. There'll be his Twitter links down below. And I follow him on Twitter, and he posts basically everything he does there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
if you want to see what he does and keep abreast of what he's doing, I would recommend following him on Twitter, and then making sure that you're getting all of his notifications so that you could see all the videos and things that he publishes.
and subscribe to Mindgasms too.
Yes, subscribe to my Gasm's channel.
And of course, subscribe to your channel, Woke Centrist, if they haven't done so already.
Yes, as this one as well. I need to get around to making a Patreon page. I will eventually. I just gotta do it and not procrastinate about it. I don't spend a whole lot of time in front of my computer these days, and I need to make some time for that. So this will come out. I will make probably 2 snippets and videos and stuff um, of this, trying to make more regular content and clips and stuff like that. But yeah, keep following. The next thing we're gonna do is I haven't even thought about it yet.
We could talk about Hollow Man, right?
That's right. I forgot that we put that in the pocket. So we have. We can go ahead and do Hollow Man next week,
Cool.
if you like, and we can go ahead and talk about that movie. And it's another Paul
Paul
Verhoeven film,
Verhoeven.
and it's unlike. I would say it's unlike his other films that
I
I've
would say so
watched so
too.
far.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite different, but I could
Yeah,
still
it's
see
not
his touch
really
there.
yeah, it's not really satirical, but it's a really interesting concept.
Yeah, super creepy.
Hmm.
But another recommendation I have for you, Andrew, because I know you're a Stephen King fan, and specifically a fan of the book The Stand.
Hmm.
I didn't know if you knew this, but the miniseries is out.
Oh yeah, you told me that.
Yeah, I've
Is it
watched the
on,
first episode so far,
where did
and
you watch it? Where can you watch it?
you could probably try the super secret site. I have
Okay.
CBS All Access, which is where it is exclusively.
Okay.
That's a streaming service, but I'm pretty sure you can find it on your super secret site. But they treat it a little differently than the way the book treats it. I've been enjoying it so far, the first episode. But the way they do it is, um, in the present is when they're at Colorado, and then they're constantly doing flashbacks to the times before.
Oh,
So
okay.
so it looks like the first episode focuses on the character, what's his name? Harold. And when you first see Harold in the miniseries, he's basically taking care of the dead bodies. You know, that's his job
Oh,
when he's
okay.
in Colorado.
Right.
And then you get to see like a partial origin story. So the partial origin is from when the pandemic started to when they first start to leave the town. And they do cover Stu as well. So you get to see Stu being covered as well as Harold and Fran. I will say that Fran is a bit more, I don't know how to say it, like, Fran wasn't the most cheery person in the book, but she seems like super depressed in this book.
Oh, okay.
And she kind of looks the part as well.
Like in general, or more so in the flashbacks than later on? Because I remember in the earlier part of the book, she seemed like she was more that way.
Yeah, in the later parts of the book, because actually the present time, they actually don't focus much at all in the present. So most of it is telling the story from the beginning. And from
Oh,
what I
okay.
understand, the next um, episode is going to be, it's going to introduce Frank. So I'm assuming it's going to introduce the characters and have them slowly go through the story. So I think they did a good job so far. I like the tone of it. Um, and they did pretty good. Like I would recommend it if you're a fan so far. So far I've enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty decent.
Cool. Yeah, I should
It's
check it out.
definitely better than the other mini series they made. I know even
Oh,
like
that's good.
Gary Sinise is in it and Molly Ringwald and but yeah, it's the other miniseries before it was a bit on the cheese factor side, I would say.
Right. Yeah, that can be an unfortunate. That's why Stephen King adaptations can be hit or miss because there are definitely a lot of moments in a lot of his books that could easily be made cheesy when you transfer them to film, but like they work better in book form.
Yeah, I would say that the first miniseries did have a somewhat of a high cheese factor. This one, because they got the tone right, the cheese factor isn't there. I think that's the important part of the show is that the tone is correct.
That's good.
Yeah, so when you see it, you'll know what I mean if you've actually seen the miniseries. You could watch the miniseries for free. It's floating around on YouTube. I'm saying the older one.
Oh,
'Cause
right.
yeah, I
Yeah.
watched that one in two times speed. But it's worth watching just to check it out. But yeah, this new one is actually pretty decent. I was like, oh, they actually did pretty good. One thing I do, it's just a minor thing about Harold, but Harold in the show was is not doesn't have like that change to him. Because
Oh,
you
he
know
doesn't?
how in the beginning of the book he's kind of overweight and like nerdy, and then when he gets to Colorado, he's like in shape and
Hmm.
he has a bit more confidence. Um, that's not there. He's always, well, he has a bit more confidence, but he doesn't go through that physical change. You know,
Oh,
he's kind of just like a skinny, nerdy guy.
oh.
And
That
so,
doesn't sound as good to me.
yeah, well, the same thing happened in the miniseries, except he didn't get in shape. He just kind of stayed the same.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of hard to, I guess it's hard to ask an actor to do that. And I guess it's also more difficult that they're filming the present, or at least showing you the present as well as the past at the same time.
They could have done all like all the filming of one part of the story at one time and all the filming of the other part of the story at another time, or maybe that wouldn't work if you maybe you would have to do that with all the characters and it wouldn't work for just some of them. But I mean lots of actors do that, be like put on a lot of
Yeah.
weight or lose a lot of weight for roles, obviously, right? Like Christian Bale is an example that people use all the time because he I forget what, oh yeah, he got like so skinny that he risked death in that movie The Machinist, and then he got
Mhm.
jacked for Batman.
Yeah, then didn't he get fat for some other movie?
Yeah, he got fat for that recent movie that I haven't seen where he plays Dick
Dick
Cheney.
Cheney, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, he's into his acting. But then you have to think of the slowdown that was caused over one character's portrayal as far as filming the
hmm
stand. And there's probably some extra costs related to that. So
yeah,
I kind of just, I'm not that concerned that they didn't do that transformation, but it's there. You'll see it. You're like,
okay.
oh, like Harold didn't really change much as far as his appearance goes.
Oh, okay. I just think that that's kind of an important aspect for his character because his physical and psychological transformation, and like both of them, because his physical transformation adds to him getting more confidence, as you said. They both are major factors in him basically turning evil later on and having that sexual relationship with that woman who kind of like wants to be the dark man's woman, and
Yeah, she
they
wants to
bomb
birth a
and they,
demon baby.
yeah, and then they bomb people and kill people, and he gets totally fucked up.
Yeah, I think what they do in the show is to play up his nerdiness in the beginning. So like in the very beginning, he's extremely socially awkward and nerdy. And then when you see him in Colorado, he's just gonna have his head down and he's like trying to do the body cleanup work. And he's doing well. The one thing I like that they got right, as opposed to the other miniseries, is we do get to see like the fake smiling,
Oh, right.
and I think they did a pretty good job there. Um,
Yeah,
but
the actors, it always amazes me in movies and TV shows when actors do a really good job, and I see this often of actors like smiling like a fucking psychopath. Like you can see them smiling, but then you look at their eyes and it's like they have demon eyes.
mhm. So yeah, I think they just played up other parts more, like instead of his appearance, like his socially awkward nature. Um, but yeah, I say it's worth checking out though. I think you would like it
Yeah, I
based off
probably
of my
would.
first impression of the first episode. I was somewhat impressed. Well,
Cool.
I was impressed compared to the previous miniseries. I'd say at
Right,
least check out the first episode of that as well,
right.
and compare the two. But of course, one was made in the early '90s, and you have like the modern cinematic sensibilities that we have today, and how those things contrast is pretty big.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
yeah, man, check it out. But
All
yeah,
right.
I was trying to do end plugs here, and then I got in a discussion about the stand miniseries.
Yeah,
But yeah, we'll check out Hollow Man next week. And yeah, that's what we'll talk about. Same time Saturday. We'll probably start a little bit later since Tristram isn't here. Well, Tristram, we
hmm,
all start pretty early to
yep,
accommodate his schedule, but we probably be starting a little bit later next week.
yep.
All right. Well, I'll see you guys next week. Please like and subscribe the video. Tell all of your Wheel of Time fans, hey, look, these guys are talking about the book
Yeah,
and in little bits and chunks here. And I think you guys should check it out and share it amongst your friends and keep reading. You guys have a great day.
yeah. You too. Adios until next time, everyone.